Why did you want to go to law school? I was asked this question during my interview for Cresthorn Law. Other interviews also ask some variation of that question. I did get asked that during the interview for my undergrad of business administration. In both instances, I went autopilot mode, spewing bullshit that would make me look good. I was an expert in giving the generic, correct answer called for by the situation and feigning conviction behind my statements. But then again, the interviewer had no doubt heard those sorts of answers many times before and would have accepted it regardless of perceived sincerity. The difference for law school was a certain pressure to give an answer that sounded socially responsible, if that was the right term. Making money, fix it up a bit to sound professional and not too greedy was a perfectly acceptable answer for business school. But saying you want to land a well-paying job at a high-powered law firm, the American dream, wouldn't cut it for a law school interview. That goes doubly so for Cresthorn Law, which was geared towards legal practice in the field of Adumbry. We were practically required to give the help in the fight against Adumbry in our own way answer. Most Cresthorn students did have that noble goal in their hearts, although how long that nobility stays within them was a different question. Heck, we even got Dean wanting to play hero, resorting to illegal means to gain powers. How about me? What was the true reason I wanted to go to law school? That's simple: gain skills to correctly interpret the rules and be able to faithfully follow them. The rules governed my life. But they weren't as simple as they seemed. Rule number 7, do not do anything that would break the character of the face I have on, for one, had very broad applications. I was a vengeful, petty little brat in high school, but very proud of my work. In the end, her only remaining friend was, get this, me. A true divine comedy. To be fair, both of us came out a better person after that. She became a decent human being and had only me to thank for it. On my part, I came to realize that gloating after making a person suffer wasn't the right way. Gloating meant I wanted to see the other person's reaction, which in turn meant I valued their reaction. Which I shouldn't. Because that's stupid. This time, I had a novel problem when it came to the application of the rules. Do they apply when I'm transformed? I'd been staying at Amber Dean's house for a week now, spending my nights pondering this question. No satisfactory definitive answer has yet come to mind during my internal deliberations. The dilemma was mostly due to one of my views that my transformed body was a different person altogether. A counterpoint was that my mind was still the same, so the rules should still be effective, right? Could this situation be considered analogous to a person changing citizenship, hence getting affected by a different set of laws and whatnot? Like if a married couple who were citizens of a country where divorce was illegal, not sure how many countries were still that conservative, went here in the US to get a divorce, they'd still be married because the laws of the country of citizenship govern civil status. But if they somehow got US citizenship, they can obtain a binding divorce. At least, that was my understanding of it. We hadn't gone that far yet in my international law class. Did the rules follow my original body, since they were made for it, such that having a different body meant a different set of rules? I dunno. But enough of that. Tonight, I decided to have a break from studying the different ways of interpreting and applying the law for some experimentation. Dean and her older sister left to attend some fancy party hosted by a family friend of theirs, a wealthy business tycoon who recently opened a 5-star hotel. And so, they were gone for the night. Before leaving, Dean repeated a dozen times why I should remain inside her house, detailing all their state-of-the-art security system. I think people from a security agency would even come to the house if there was a break-in, and they were guaranteed to arrive before the police. Very fancy. Of course, Dean couldn't lock me in the house. She did leave with me the keys. I'm going out. Sorry, Dean. My destination was a mansion under construction at the edge of Poblacion Verde. It was about 20 minutes of brisk jogging from Dean's house. From the looks of it, it was going to be a huge house, and would surely be as luxurious, if not more, than the houses around it. I bet the piece of land it was on was even more expensive than Dean's because it was in a secluded portion of Poblacion Verde. Exclusivity in a cramped city like La Esperanza was premium. I found the half-built house when Dean and I were jogging late afternoon last Friday. There were no workers at this time of the night, so it was the perfect place for some privacy. I circled to the back of the structure where the construction materials were stacked to avoid any cameras and entered the open part of the house. The only sources of light were the bright moon and the distant streetlights. I stepped into what I assumed was going to be the kitchen based on the works already made, gingerly walking in, careful not to move anything out of place, until I reached an open space free from sawdust and gravel. I took out the contents of my bag and set them on a nearby workbench. A knife, an empty microwavable container, another container with a couple of raw chicken legs, a third one with fried chicken, and some bandages and ointments for wounds from my own first aid kit. Dean might wonder why I had so many chicken legs for dinner. It was so hard to smuggle them out along with the knife while avoiding the security cameras in her house. Why were there so many cameras everywhere nowadays? After arranging them neatly on the bench, I spread out clear plastic sheets across the floor, the same one used for wrapping books. I bought some at the mall yesterday. I also fixed across my hips the same plastic wrap fashioned into a skirt. My dark blue velvet dolphin shorts were short enough to be covered by the makeshift skirt. I took off my black sweatshirt and sneakers and set them aside to avoid getting blood on them. The chilly wind blew in from the gaps of the roof and wrapped around me, making the hairs on my skin stand on end from the cold. I held my breath as I gripped the knife tightly with my right hand. I placed my left hand on my abdomen and clenched my jaws. Here goes. The sharp edge of the knife glided across my pale skin like the blades of a figure skater elegantly slicing through the ice. Blood slowly dripped out of my parted skin. It wasn't enough. I steeled myself for another pass of the knife. Shit. I couldn't explain exactly how, but it was extremely grating to cut my stomach compared to the time I stabbed my palm. The blade bit into my flesh a little deeper. I angled it up a notch as I pulled on my skin with my left hand, intentionally slicing off a tiny bit of my flesh. Blood raced down my torso, caught by the plastic skirt. I collected the dripping blood with the empty container, but some drops missed their mark and landed on my feet and the floor, which was thankfully covered by the plastic sheets. I slid the sliver of my flesh sticking to the knife into the container with my blood. I breathed slowly. There was searing pain from the cut, but it felt good somewhat, like when you scratch stretch marks. Weird comparison, I know. My rapid healing added to the feeling of euphoria from the pain. This could get addictive. Stop that. I slapped myself with as much force as I could muster, rattling my head. This was the primary way Asunder tricked people into giving up their minds. Give them a body of a superhuman and they'd naturally crave for more, until they weren't themselves anymore. And it wasn't only in cases of Asunder seeding. There were stringent government regulations on enhancing and augmenting humans for that very same reason. Some people get carried away and weren't remotely human anymore after so many enhancements. I examined the container of my blood with the small piece of my flesh floating on top, a gross garnish on a vampiric drink. On to my experiment. I didn't know how I turned into the big bad wolf last time. Or how I returned to my own body. All I could remember was the intense rage at the people attacking me, the inconceivable hunger, the unstoppable desire to consume them, to feel their bones break between my teeth, to chew their soft flesh. I summoned my mask, examined it for a couple of seconds, and put it on with a nonchalant shrug. A familiar surge of power. Strength. I looked down to confirm that I had indeed changed. Black gloves with red-tipped claws were on my hands. Braided golden hair flowing down over my chest, check. Hot body with shapely long legs, check and check. The gash on my bare midriff healed at an insane speed, so much faster than earlier. The flesh stitched itself like steel getting welded together. The wound was gone. I could feel the formidable power of the muscles of my jaws. I snapped at the air a couple of times to test out my precious fangs, the impact of the bites running through my skull. First up was the fried chicken. I took a bite. The crispy skin, juicy meat, and brittle bones offered no resistance, and it tasted like fried chicken. Good fried chicken, I mused, patting myself in my mind. The other fried chicken leg I swallowed whole with my wide mouth. Then I waited for a few minutes, staring around me. Nothing. Second was the raw chicken legs. I would have found them disgusting to eat were I in my original body, but I didn't mind them now. Another point for the different body, different rules theory. I held up both raw chicken legs and chomped on them at the same time. Wow, what an amazing taste of nothing. A dab of chickeny taste lingered on my tongue, but besides that, there was nothing of note. Raw chicken was bland and rubbery. As expected, nothing happened too. My working hypothesis was that I needed human flesh and blood to trigger the transformation. I couldn't exactly raid a graveyard or a coroner's office or a morgue, nor did I want to. That was where I drew the line. Too icky. I suspected I needed the flesh and blood to be fresh anyway. I had to make do with my blood and meat. I opened my mouth and dumped my blood, including the tiny piece of my flesh, down my throat in one go. Shutting my mouth, I swallowed quickly. My stomach rumbled and I held it with my arms, dropping the container to the floor. It tasted so disgusting. I vomited, saliva and blood splattering the plastic sheet on the floor. This experiment only added more questions. Why did I find my flesh and blood disgusting even though I munched on other people's body parts with gusto? Did I need to eat a different person to trigger my transformation? What do I do next? Kidnap someone and take a bite out of them? I couldn't see any other way moving forward. My phone rang, making me tense up, wary. I sighed when I saw it was only Dean calling. I removed my mask and reverted to human form. "Hi, Dean," I said, answering the phone. "How's the party?" I checked my wound. No trace of it remained. There was no need for the first aid kit. "It's the usual boring," she said with a sigh. I had no idea what the usual was supposed to be for someone as rich as her. I should have persuaded Sis to take you too. I think I could have snuck you in. No way, I don't know what to do in those parties. And I don't have fancy clothes for it. Anyway, I'm going home now because I'm worried about you. I pinned the phone between my cheek and shoulder to free my hands and started packing my things. I carefully removed my plastic skirt and wrapped it with the plastic sheets covering the floor. Worried? Why? Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm outside doing some jogging actually. I didn't lie about leaving the house because of the security cameras. What? Dean said, nearly yelling. Someone might pick you up again. I wondered why she didn't use the word kidnap. Did she think I was going to be sensitive about it? Where are you right now? Just around here. Don't worry, I'm going back to your house. Okay, I'll get home in about 30 minutes. We have to prepare for guests tonight. Guests? Who? The group will be there later. My sister will stay over at her boyfriend's flat tonight so we have the house to ourselves. Dario called for a meeting. I raised my brow in interest. Really? What's it about? He said he has a new lead in pursuing the 2MS. I smiled. Seems like I won't have to bite off the leg of a homeless man in some back alley to continue my experiment. Those kidnappers wouldn't mind me experimenting on them now, would they? Nothing can beat a hot shower after a jog to wash away the sticky sweat and dirt from my body. Okay, that wasn't accurate because a lot of things can beat a hot shower, like that helicopter with machine guns and missiles that tried to kill me at the docks. It was also a fact that a shower normally didn't fight back, so it was pretty easy to beat. But it was still awesome. Especially if you were using a full-body shower system with 8 body massage shower jets and an overhead rainfall shower, all of which had independent controls for pressure and temperature. Just saying I could do a lot with this shower. As I wondered how expensive all of this was, I ran my finger across my wound on my abdomen, now a scar, and even that scar was fading quickly. Soon, there would be no trace of it whatsoever. My flawless skin would be back. Fine, my skin was not really flawless, but it could be if I used Dean's celeb-level, luxury skincare products long enough. Deciding that I spent enough time racking up Dean's water bill, I turned off the shower, dried myself, and dressed up in comfy shirt and shorts. Some of Dean's friends were already hanging out below, and yes, those fake Corbrings weren't my friends. It was about time I made friends with them though. I might get a clue of what they really wanted with me and Dean, why Myra attacked us in the first place, or how did the two MS know about me. They held plenty of secrets, but I also had mine. And I'd hold my trump card close for as long as possible while I was still trying to get my bearings in the midst of all of this crap. The sound of the news blaring from a TV echoed through the spiral staircase as I descended to the entertainment room/den of sorts where the meeting was going to be held. I caught snippets of it, the reporter talking about the investigation of the Sanders fire, some safety permit issues, the status of the injured, and the funeral of the dead. "Switch the channel," Myra said. I stopped going down, deciding to eavesdrop for a bit. "Why are we even watching this?" she said. "Too much annoying stuff in the news." "I'm checking if there's something about what happened at the docks," said a voice I recognized to be Johan's. I met him only once before. Tall, serious face, a bit lanky, but also had broad shoulders. I recalled he worked at the police station in the Asunder investigation unit. I was sure he wasn't a cop, but I didn't exactly get what his job there was. "A technician?" "What's wrong, Myra?" Dean said. "And do you guys have any clue who attacked us at the mall? They should be brought to justice, not just for attacking us but also for injuring and killing those people." "Yeah, Myra. Those people should pay for what they did, right?" Rio said with subtle sarcasm that I picked up. "Yes, they should," Myra said, sounding strained. I smirked. I wondered how Everett was holding up knowing he killed 2 people, even if unintentionally. I wouldn't care if I was in his shoes. He seemed like a normal decent person, so he should be bothered by it. Surprisingly, Everett spoke up. "They needlessly died in that fire. If only." Dean, apparently oblivious to the truth of the matter, said, "Don't get disheartened. You couldn't save everyone there. But you saved me and Aaron, and we're thankful for that. What we need to do is make sure the 2 MS don't do it again." Everett said something I couldn't make out. "That's enough," Johan said. "Look, the news already changed." That was my cue. I stepped loudly down the stairs and went inside the room. "Hello," I said. "Dario's not here yet?" "Not yet," Dean said. "But he texted me that he's near. Have a seat, Aaron. I heated some cookies over there at the bar. Some chips too, if you want." "Cookies and chips. Looks like we're having a play date," I said. "Sorry, I couldn't prepare anything better. I didn't have the time." "It's fine, really." Dean's game room was not that huge, but huge enough for a pool table, the latest Imago virtual reality system, a minibar, and a bunch of beanbags of assorted colors congregating around a widescreen probably 50, maybe 55 inches. I didn't take any of the snacks and plopped myself down on one of the beanbags. The disgusting taste of my blood persisted on my tongue, making me lose my appetite. I brushed my mouth with so much intensity it bled, obviously very hard to do given my regenerative abilities, but the repulsive taste didn't leave. The others weren't keen on continuing their conversation, and Dean didn't know what to say, so all of us just watched the news with awkward silence. The newscaster for XYTV reported, "The situation at Madagascar is now escalating with the appearance of the 3rd category Kregan, Titan class at Dumbry earlier today, prompting the Gerhard International Research Alliance to recommend to the UN Security Council to raise an alert for a possible purple bloom." The Free Will Initiative have already deployed their drones looking for the purple bloom. Rio whistled. A purple bloom? Wow. Is Madagascar far from us? He said, asking the question that I also thought of when the first Kregan was reported at Madagascar. Yes, I said. It's off the southeastern coast of South Africa. The newscaster continued, however, field correspondent Henry Leedy is here to give us good news. Henry. A male reporter appeared on screen wearing a bulletproof vest over his attire. He was in a military camp. Yes, Caitlin, very good news. A spokesperson from the UNSC forces deployed here informed us that the third Kregan, designated as 15-03, may have been eliminated. The screen switched to a video of said Adumbri. It took the form of a four-armed, six-legged giant centaur, about half as tall as the Statue of Liberty, with skeletal wings. A huge spear pierced its body like it was stabbed with a telephone pole entering from above its right shoulder and out its lower left side. Two of its excessively long tree-like arms were trying to remove the spear while the other hands swatted at the drones and helicopters peppering it with gunfire and missiles. It had the face of a human baby with sprawling antlers of a deer, bawling, crying out in pain. We were all transfixed at the TV. The reporter said as the video played, as you can see, this footage is not distorted compared to previous ones of the other Kregans. That is because the U.S. Army has successfully hit 15-03 with an Alois reality wedge, minimizing its reality-rending abilities. The wedge has been converted to be fired from a railgun ship. This video was taken an hour ago before the U.S. military had begun bombarding 15-03 with kinetic missiles from the new orbital weapons satellite Longinus. We are now trying to confirm the status of the Adumbri. This may be the first time in history that human weaponry has brought down a Kregan. Longinus? Myra said. That's the name of the Roman soldier who stabbed the side of Jesus Christ with a spear, I said. Wow, you know some stuff, Rio said. People know stuff, Rio, Myra said. Why did they name it that, he said, ignoring Myra. I'm not into religious symbolism, but are they saying they could kill gods with that? That we don't need the Korbrings anymore against the Adumbri? I wouldn't equate Adumbri to gods, said Johann. More like demons, and the Korbrings are gods. And we're the puny humans stuck in between their fight, Myra interjected. Rio leaned back and pointed at the TV. The question should be, is the government thinking of using that Longinus against the Korbrings? Hopefully not, Everett said in a barely audible voice. That's what we're fighting for, right? At least remove one reason for normal humans to fight the Korbrings, even if we ourselves aren't normal humans anymore. Again, everyone descended to awkward silence, only to be broken by the sound of the doorbell. That must be Dario, said Dean, relieved. It was indeed him. He entered the room following Dean, who opened the front door for him. Can I connect to the TV? He said. Got some pics and vids to show you guys. After Dean helped him, he turned to us. Okay, update, I tried what I can with your friend, Romello. I'm not sure what he remembers, he was pretty banged up anyway. He probably won't remember much even if I didn't use my powers on him. But we need to check up on him, okay? Aaron and I are on it, Dean said. Whoa, I'm part of your group. Okay, sure. I nodded. Yes, I'll talk to Romello when he gets back to school. Next topic is the two MS, the Mark and Big Marcy brothers. The initial story for the docks incident was something with dangerous chemicals, but now they're saying it's connected to smuggling. At the moment, the police are treating it as a fight between groups of organized crime syndicates operating here in the city. I don't know how it got twisted to that, but here we are. The case got assigned to someone who I'm sure is in the 2MS pocket, Johann said. Because of what happened, the 2MS are lying low. My leads on their operations have dried up. Luckily, the professor was able to supply us with new information. Dario showed us a picture of a woman on the screen with silver hair in a fashionable bob cut. She had beautiful olive skin, delicate yet sharp facial features, including high, well-defined cheekbones, and curiously silver pupils that matched her hair. I present to you Bianca Eleanor Ceresa. She's hot, Rio hooted. Wait, she looks familiar. I don't watch TV much, but I think I've seen her somewhere before. Bianca is a niece of Mario Ceresa, which you may recognize as the owner of a famous chain of luxury hotels. Their family also owns the Royal Ceresa Cruise Line's very subtle naming sense, and they also have stocks in the bioaugmentronics industry. Oh, I remember now. She's in that reality show, forgot the name. Bianca's Travel Diary. You watch that? Myra said to Rio in a judging tone. No, but I see it sometimes when I flip channels. Dario cleared his throat. Going back on track here. The professor said she's a prospective customer of the 2MS. We need to get close to her and try to find out the location of the Red Island. Red Island? I planned to just keep quiet, sit back and make myself small, but I was interested in possible food sources. I raised my hand. What's the Red Island? Right, both of you still don't know about it, Dario said. As I've explained, our enemies are trying to get the powers of the Adumbri without getting taken over by them. The 2MS already have a sort of prototype technology that does that to some extent. They offer this to the rich and powerful in return for funding and all kinds of support. And these customers of theirs are operated on at the Red Island. I believe it's also on this island where they keep their experiments and do some sort of maintenance on their customers. So they wouldn't turn into a monster like the one at the docks. I said innocently. Yes, Dario said. The 2MS dropped the ball on that one. I suspect it was a person that was recently operated on. Or maybe they were trying to make a mutant to sell as a weapon. If only we knew about it earlier, then we could have staked out the docks. But now, I have no idea about their movements. Perhaps our best lead is Bianca here. He jabbed his thumb at the screen. He showed us more pictures and videos of her. Those silver eyes look beautiful but also creepy, Myra said. Augments, Johan said. She has the money for them. Oh, they're contacts, Rio said. We all looked at him. She showed that she's just wearing contacts for fashion in her show. You were really watching her show? Rio shrugged. She said she's against any augments or enhancements. It's odd she wants to be a customer of the 2MS. This is the information provided by the professor, said Dario, so I trust it. He next showed us a video of Bianca with 2 bodyguards. I think you know about them, Rio, he said. Since my TV viewing habits are already exposed, might as well. They're fraternal twins, a guy and a gal. Zachary and Zazary. Pretty cool names. I have seen them a few times on the show shadowing Bianca. Based on the rumors on the internet from forums that I will not admit I browse, they're both not only augmented but also enhanced to the max, like performance-enhancing drugged-up galore, pumped high to the sky. My sources also say their bioaugmentronics might rival Jim Ambrose's. Rio grinned. Served him right. What do we do next? Johan said. That's why we're meeting tonight. The professor only provided me with this information. It's up to us to decide our actions. Bianca is currently in this city, no doubt negotiating with the 2MS. We should find her, then get close to her. Maybe Myra can disguise. Me? Why me? You don't mean to tell me I'll dress up and try to befriend her? I'll get close to her. Obviously, it was Rio who said that. I'm not disguising myself. I'll get found out right away. Wait, Dario said, we're just brainstorming here. Dean's hand shot up and everyone stopped bickering. If I may, I have a suggestion. You see, I also have seen Bianca. Not on TV, but personally. Earlier I was at a party and I saw her there. If you can just find the places she'll go to while she's in the city, maybe a bar or a restaurant, then I'll try to get close to her. I don't personally know her, but it's easy to strike up a conversation since we have common friends. Wow. Can you ask for her autograph? Rio said. Myra punched him on the shoulder. That seems to be our best bet for now, Dario said. Are you okay going alone? We could have Myra go with you. How about I go with Dean? I said. I can be Dean's sidekick since she already has Queen Bee vibes. I'll be perfect to tag along with her. But the two MS already know your face, Everett said. Bianca doesn't. Dean said, will it matter? What if they're watching Bianca because she's going to be one of them and then they'll spot Aaron? That's such a small chance though. We can disguise Aaron to be safe, Rio said. That's way better than trying to disguise a gorilla like Myra. His statement earned him another punch. But seriously, you can't expect Myra to act all fancy and girly and all that. It'll be assuring to have Aaron by my side, Dean said. I was expecting her to turn me down. I think my power is enough to protect us. And we'll pick a public place anyway, we're not going to follow them somewhere dangerous. Are you sure about this, Aaron? Dario said, looking at me straight in the eye. This is going to be dangerous. Our existence is already dangerous, Rio said. Well, we have 50% chance of getting out of this alive, I said, trying to be humorous and get closer to them. 50%? How so? Either we get out alive or we don't. That elicited a few chuckles. Dean said, I don't think that's how math works. And that's why I became a law student and not a mathematician. Although Dean and I volunteered to try and get close to Bianca and I think Dean had a pretty good shot of making friends with her, better than Myra for sure, Dario was still worried there might be no opportunity to meet her in the first place. Johan found the hotel she was staying in because some cops had escorted her there when she arrived in the city. Special favor from the mayor was the rumor. The rest of the team tried to stake out the hotel for the next couple of days, but they didn't have the free time to do it round the clock, and they wouldn't even know if Bianca left the hotel in a heavily tinted car anyway. She was a celebrity and surely had experience avoiding paparazzi. Fate, however, was on our side when we, or rather Rio, found out that Bianca decided to shoot her stay here in the city for an episode of Bianca's travel diary. It included visiting various nightclubs, bars, trendy places boasted by La Esperanza. We should just pick the right place. What's this Olympus Mons? I said, scrolling through Bianca's website on my phone. She picked the places where she would visit from the suggestions of her fans and put up a schedule online so her fans could see her. It's not one of those exclusive places with bouncers at the entrance. Nope. It's really pricey though. And Bianca's going there at night, right? That place is going to be packed. I doubt we could get in. How about this place, Eve? Eve is very exclusive. I'm surprised they're going to let her film. You need to be invited by someone who's a regular there. Dean drank coffee from her tumbler and shrugged. I don't know anyone who has been there. Maybe Sis does. Not sure. I'm not familiar with these places, I said, handing her my phone. Wow, she's going to a lot of clubs and bars here. How about we cross off the places she'll be going at? Night? They'll be surely full of people and we'll have a hard time trying to get close to her. Okay, afternoon then. It's annoying she keeps on changing her schedule for the day. Wait, she has a new post. Arthuria Infinity O. I know this one. It's on top of the Arthuria Hotel. And she's going there this afternoon. We got a shot with that one. Maybe. It's a rooftop bar of a 5-star hotel, so it's pretty expensive. The upside is we don't need to be on a reserved list to get in. Dean took out her phone and started texting. I'm going to tell the others about this. We go there after class. I think we can have our lunch there. Lunch with drinks, Dean laughed. Yeah. If we get there early, we'll already have a spot to relax. And we'll just wait for her. Cool. Any ideas on how to start the conversation with her? That I don't know. Romello still hadn't come back to class. I heard he was already out of the hospital and spending several days at home to recover. He hadn't attempted to contact me, so I assumed he didn't remember we were together before he got pummeled. If everything worked out, he wouldn't remember anything connected to me. After class, Dean helped me fix up a feeble attempt at a disguise. I wore a wig and she styled me with heavier makeup than usual that practically turned me into a different person. I was so used to wearing light makeup that I was surprised with Dean's handiwork. Bianca didn't know who I was anyway, so I felt this was unnecessary. What were the chances the two MS sent people to watch her? They wouldn't bother. If they did have people trailing her, what was the likelihood one of them knew my face? The guy who did probably got killed by yours truly at the docks. I still had no clue why the two MS targeted me or what they wanted with me, and that made me a tiny bit apprehensive with getting close to a prospective client of theirs. But the faster the two MS were brought down, the sooner I'd have peace of mind and not be cautious of another kidnapping. Dean drove us to our meeting place, a coffee shop a couple of blocks away from Arthuria Hotel. Everett and Rio were already there. They were the only ones available at such short notice. "Hi, girls," Rio said, removing his sunglasses when we entered the cafe. "Shades indoors?" Dean said. "I was going for a spy mission, undercover look. You get what I mean." "You just look more suspicious," Everett said. We discussed our plan, which was basically we try to make friends with Bianca, just on the fly. We sucked. There was no actual concrete plan beyond Dean having common friends with Bianca. Rio and Everett were going to be backup if something went wrong. But what could the two of them do if the mission went downhill? "Are you going to use your ferry?" I asked in a whisper to Rio. "No, it's too far," he said. "Way too far for me to maintain the connection with my ferry. The bar is at the top of the hotel, I'll be at street level. Can't you find a place inside the hotel?" I refused to kneel for hours inside a handicapped bathroom stall. It's too easy to get caught. "How about I book a room?" Dean said. "That's too expensive," I said. From Dean's expression, I could tell she didn't care about costs. "And we'll leave a record when we use your credit card." "You're right. Better not do it." "We'll be here outside," Everett said. "Don't worry. Just call us and we'll be there." "As fast as the elevator could take us from the ground floor to the top," Rio said with a laugh. The open-air bar of Arthuria was bordered by an infinity pool instead of the usual pool in the middle with the lounge chairs at the sides. It had a very chic design and offered an unmatched view of the city, the other skyscrapers bowing before it. The price point matched the luxury they afforded their customers. They charged a cover just to get in, and the prices of the food and drinks were so expensive they weren't even written on the menu. The sort of people who didn't care what was on their bill came here. The sort of people like Dean. Sometimes, I pitied guys taking us girls out on dates. Society placed such a huge burden on them to pay the bill, and I wouldn't wish paying the bill of this place on my worst enemy. It was a weekday afternoon, right after lunchtime. However, there were way more people here than we expected, especially given the ridiculous prices. Bianca was clearly the reason for that. Her crew was already on site, setting up stuff, and after half an hour Bianca herself showed up with her two bodyguards, Zachary and Zazary. I wasn't a drinker. I just stretched the drink Dean ordered for me while we watched Bianca shoot her show. Rays of the Sun was the name of the drink, I think. I don't like it. What kind of person puts spices in their drink? Christopher Columbus didn't accidentally discover America and kill the natives while looking for the spice islands of Asia just for spice to be put in drinks. Sorry for assuming the worst in people, I thought sarcastically. "Should we go too?" Dean asked. She barely spends time talking to them. Just a picture and autograph. She's probably rushing to get to the next location. Want an autograph to give to Rio? We didn't think this through. Dean's brows furrowed. I chewed on my tongue, thinking of a plan. We could go up to her and mention the rich people friends of Dean which she may know. Still, that didn't mean she'd stay and chat with us. Dean was right. We didn't think this through. Dean stood up. I'm going to line up too. I held her hand. Wait. I checked around to see if there was anything I could use. Something sharp. There. One of Bianca's crew was using a cutter to open a box of what I assumed were souvenirs for her fans. It looked like a stationary cutter where you could break off the end of the blade when it became too dull. I pulled Dean down and whispered, "Wait here for me. I'll be gone for just a minute. Think of a story for Bianca or something. We go when she's meeting with her last fan on the line." What? Dean said. You have a plan? Trust me on this. She looked confused but nodded. I walked to the employee with the cutter. Excuse me, miss. Hi, ma'am, are you here for the free shirts? We give them after you have met with Miss Bianca. We only have limited stocks though, but we'll try to give one to everyone. Kindly form a line there. She pointed at the line by the poolside snaking to Bianca's table. Bianca was posing with a group of fans for a picture. Oh, I'm going to line up later. I'm just wondering if I can borrow your cutter for a minute. It'll be quick, promise. I just want to cut a stationery into a shape before I have it signed by Bianca. I grabbed the cutter from her hands when I saw her hesitate. Thank you very much. Just a sec. I walked away before she could complain. As soon as I turned my back to her, I pushed up the blade of the cutter. Next, I removed the back portion. The cap at the end could be used to remove the end of the blade that has dulled, revealing the next fresh sharp edge. I slotted the blade into the slit of the cap and in one swift motion, broke the blade. The small blade went into my pocket. I assembled the cutter back together and gave it to the assistant who came running after me. I mumbled an apology and went to find Dean. I'm back. Now will you tell me your plan? Dean said. What were you doing over there? I explained it to her as we waited for the line of fans to end. Dean wasn't 100% on board with it, but couldn't suggest any alternative. Bianca was all smiles when she greeted us. She was so good at making a face that I couldn't tell whether she was faking it or not. Do you guys want to take a pic? She said, noticing we didn't bring anything she could write on like her other fans. We saw you at the party last time, I said. Bianca raised her brow. I nudged Dean. Yes, we've met before, Dean said a bit too shakily. She wasn't lying though, she really did see Bianca at the party she attended the night I experimented drinking my blood. Dean composed herself and explained to Bianca who she was and when they met. Bianca, without missing a stride, talked to Dean like they were long-lost friends, recounting the party. Dean could only keep up the conversation for so long. Bianca would eventually leave and go to her next scheduled shooting. Time for me to butt in. Dean here really wanted to meet you for a different reason though. I mean different from the one you're thinking. This won't take too much of your time if we can talk a bit. Wait, who are you again? Bianca said to me. I hadn't introduced myself to her. Were you even there at the party? She asked, mildly annoyed. Yeah, but I was just at the sides. I'm Dean's sort of +1 wherever she goes. No, not in a relationship sense, we're both straight. I meant that I'm the one who knows her secret. Dean said, I know we're, forbidden from knowing about each other, but I very much want to be friends with someone like me. Like you? Bianca said. Zazari who was standing beside her approached us with her hand out, ready to shoo us away. We probably looked like crazed fans at that moment. I took Dean's hand, held it on the table, and took out the blade I nicked earlier. Zazary's hand, gloved and black, and a few inches away from us, started to vibrate. Gold lines glowed beneath the leather, burning through it. We were a few seconds from having our faces blown off, which would admittedly make a pretty epic episode of Bianca's travel diary, probably the best episode to date, but I'd rather that it wouldn't go that way. "Please take a look," I said, as I cut deep into Dean's palm. Zazary was about to lunge at us. "Stop," Bianca said, her voice curt and commanding authority. It was just one word, but it was as if a different person spoke compared to the amiable, socialite celebrity host we were talking to a moment ago. Zazary withdrew her hand, her glove still smoldering. Hints of silver machinery showed through the holes. Blood spurted out of the cut on Dean's palm, then the wound quickly healed and disappeared. I cut it deep enough that the unnatural healing of the wound was observable. "She's very squeamish about it," I said. "So she told me to cut it." "I know about Dean's secret of being a member of the you-know-what club," Dean continued. "I've heard rumors you were in town because you planned on becoming a member too. Our identities are kept secret from each other, and the only ones who know, besides you-know-who, are the people who help us with our daily lives. Obviously, they have to know. Like my best friend here." "But Dean also wants to be friends with someone like her," I said. "I had to force her to do this. We're very sorry we had to do it in such a creepy way." Zazary stooped down and whispered to Bianca's ear. A fleeting look of irritation swept through Bianca's beautiful face. She waved Zazary away. "Can't you see I'm talking to my friends? Move the schedule of the next place, I don't care what you do, that's not my problem. Call the waiter, let's have something to eat for my newfound friends." I smirked inwardly. I guessed right. Bianca was like me. When Dad was still in the land of the officially alive, we used to have his and Mom's friends over for a barbecue on Saturdays. One of them, Auntie Carla, was obsessed with watching a documentary series about serial killers, and she made all of them watch at least one episode each time while waiting for the food. Pretty little me, running all over the house, watched it sometimes as well, but I didn't really pay it any mind. A vague feeling of understanding was all I had of the people featured in it. Eventually, Mom got hooked and watched stuff like it even after Dad was gone. Murder mysteries, crime scene investigations, unsolved cases, Mom used to love them. Maybe they reminded her of the simpler times when Dad was still around. These shows were my first exposure to other, not-so-normal people. And they were very interesting. Oftentimes, the shows included studies trying to explain their minds, mostly conducted on the prison population, more like solely conducted on prisoners. I guess, they were most accessible, they weren't going anywhere. Also, I doubted if people like me would go to a psychologist of our own volition. Why would we? There was nothing wrong with us. I know. The definition of wrong was highly debatable. One thing these shows didn't highlight or even understood, was that they were only able to spot these people because they had no more interest in keeping their masks up. Yes, I say masks because they took it off eventually. A face was never taken off, because there is nothing underneath, duh. A face was the truth to the person it was made for. If 20 individuals knew me by such particular face, and only I was aware of what was underneath, then who cared that that wasn't the real me? 20-1, the societal truth was my face. Which was why it irritated me to no end whenever I saw a face taken off. At that point, the face becomes a mask. It was like when you see your friend, who had said she was dieting, binge eat a bucket of fried chicken. Like, girl, what are you doing? Irritating. When a waiter came over, Bianca was back to the friendly and joyful persona she used for her show in a snap. She ordered sandwiches for us and asked us what drinks we wanted. I requested a drink that was on the fruity side with little alcohol content. After the waiter left, Bianca leaned back, crossed her legs, and said, "Zaz? How are they?" Zazari simply shook her head in response. Awesome, she said, clapping her hands. I hope you're not offended that I had Zaz scan you for wires and bugs. You can never be too careful. Oh, you didn't need to do that, Dean said, nonchalantly waving it off. If we were with the bid there would be no point for doing this at all. I crouched a bit, with my shoulders dropped as low as possible, making myself small. We already made contact. This was the time for Dean to be in control. Be front and center. If I continued butting in, Bianca's attention would be turned to me. Right now, she was fixated on Dean. She had no reason to mind me. I was a nobody in her eyes. Really? Bianca said. The Panderton Act. The bid is just too powerful with it. Dean gave a dramatic sigh. I know someone, who I'd rather not name. He disappeared and a week later his family was gathered up for testing. Bianca nodded slowly with her eyes in slits. That is true. I think I've heard of that. I told Dean to prepare this answer while we were waiting to meet Bianca. How could I trust you, was the question I anticipated Bianca to ask. This was close enough. Remembering my brief conversation with Romello about the Panderton Act, I told Dean how to answer it. And it was true. The bid would just nab suspected people whether rich or poor. Dean's story about knowing someone that was taken was a nice touch. Vague enough that Bianca was likely to have heard about something like it. Bianca's logical choice was to believe that we were with the 2MS. She wouldn't know about Dario's gang because she was new here, and I didn't think the 2MS would have told her about us. How many people were running around the city with illegal powers anyway? More likely than not, they would be connected with the criminal underground of Adumbri experimentation. At least, that was what Bianca would think. And let's say I was with the Corbrings. Then you'd be dead, Dean said. Bravo, I thought. I didn't tell her to say that, but it drove home her point. That is also true. Bianca was unfazed and kept on smiling. It's good I met you. I must confess I'm anxious about the operation. After seeing your demonstration, it seems worth it. It is, Dean said, eagerly nodding. The sensation is something hard to explain. Like you're a new person. Strength and energy you've never experienced before. I assumed Dean was truthfully speaking about her own experience. I must ask you, though. How did you know about me? Like you said, our identities are kept secret from each other. I swallowed and prayed that Dean could properly answer. This was the other question we were anticipating. We didn't have a good response for this, but I had two plans to sidestep this question. Once we are members, yes, it's very hard, Dean said. What we did was check the list of people who were going to the Red Island. New people are on a different list, you see. A list that's easier to get. The first part of our plan was name-drop Red Island to prove we were in the know. Bianca was about to say something when the waiter showed up with food. It was a good thing too because he broke Bianca's train of thought. I nudged Dean with my foot to talk before Bianca did. Dean continued, actually, we had help from someone to check the guest list. She's way older than me, so we can't really be close friends. You'll know her eventually. She looks very young compared to her actual age because of all operations done on her. With her new body, she pushed the limit on plastic surgery. Do you also plan to have plastic surgery after your trip to Red Island? I can ask her for the name of her Sergio. No, Bianca hissed. Her face momentarily contorted in rage. And it was back to her friendly expression so fast that if someone else saw it, they'd wonder if they were imagining things. This was my second plan. We knew Bianca had something against any operation on her body, so I concocted this story for Dean to tell and divert the conversation this way to elicit a reaction from her. This outcome was both unexpected and also very much welcome. Many people do that, I heard, Dean said, pushing on, acting as if she hadn't seen Bianca's outrage. We have these healing abilities, but it doesn't stop us from aging. She shrugged. I mean, I can understand the older people wanting to look young again. It also matches the young feeling of their bodies. Bianca's nostrils flared. She inhaled deeply to calm herself down. I'm not turning myself into to do that. Feeling and looking young. Nonsense. By the way, thank you for the food and drinks you ordered, Dean said, sensing it was time to change the topic. You shouldn't have. Don't worry about it. Who knows, we might become close friends in the future. Help yourselves. Bianca took one of the club sandwiches on the tray in front of us. We'll get to know each other more after your trip to the Red Island. Dean switched the topic back to rich people's social circle stuff, to which Bianca happily obliged. She probably was trying to fish information from us. I didn't dare look as if I was studying my surroundings because I could feel the eyes of Zazari on me. The only places my eyes went were Dean's face, the food, the drinks, and Bianca's face. I just nodded once in a while in between sipping my drink while listening to them talk. The sandwich was a no-no for me. A clubhouse sandwich had meat, lettuce, and other stuff in between the bread. Following rule number 2, I had to eat the bread first, leaving the filling for last, and that'd look weird. By the way, Bianca said, are you going to attend the fight this Saturday night? Dean tensed up. She gripped my knee underneath the table. Reacting quickly, I pulled up my phone. Checking Dean's schedule, I mumbled. Bianca's schedule posted on her site was on my recently visited pages. I scanned it as it loaded. It's Saturday night at the Eve, remember? I told Dean. The Eve was the nightclub I saw on Bianca's Saturday schedule. Dean had mentioned she had no idea what was inside because it was super exclusive. Putting 2 and 2 together. You meant that? Of course, I know about it. But I rarely go to the Eve. She's already very squeamish with cutting herself, I said. The sight of blood and violence makes me want to puke, Dean said with a grimace. You didn't need to tell everyone about that. Sorry, I said. I don't want to go there if I can help it. All those blood and guts. My Zaz here is going to fight this Saturday, Bianca proudly said. It'll make me so happy if you're able to come. You're fighting? I said to Zazari, horrified, with matching hand to my mouth. Isn't it dangerous? You might get killed there. I said in a whisper, you do know you're not fighting against humans. Instead of Zazari answering, Bianca spoke, she will fight. I have to show what I'm capable of. Establishing dominance in a new environment, I see. Her way though was too direct for my liking. Zachary, her other bodyguard, approached Bianca and said something to her we didn't catch. Bianca heaved a sigh and said, can't be helped. I have to go now, duty calls. Or shooting calls. She laughed and we laughed along with her. We understand, Dean said. Take care. Do try to come to my precious Zaz fight. We're new and supporters would be nice. Bianca stood up and pranced away, waving at her fans, enveloped by her crew. Oh my God, Dean mouthed exaggeratedly with barely a sound. We're still alive. The gamble paid off, I replied. She poked my side, making me jump up. Hey. I'm ticklish there. Sorry, I'm just really giddy we pulled through. I was getting worried there we'd be caught in our lies. You can escape, I pointed out. With your awesome power. I hoped she'd give me a hint of what it was. I decided to make it into a guessing game. I'm more worried about you. I don't know how I can get you to safety if her scary bodyguards decided to kill us. I don't think they'll kill us. Too many people here. They can totally do it. One test of my dead body and they'll have justification. They can say they knew I wasn't human so they killed me. Right, I said, grinning. She poked me again. Don't treat it as a joke. We could have died. How were you so sure that Bianca wouldn't just report us to the police or have her bodyguards take care of us? I shrugged. She had no reason to doubt who we are. Like I told you, the only logical choice for her given the available information she has was to assume you're truly a client of the 2MS. It's natural for people who are part of a secret organization to reach out to each other for connection. That's why it's so easy for seated people to organize cults and dupe their followers into feeding the adumbry within them. My explanation appeared to be satisfactory to Dean. It wasn't the real reason I was confident Bianca wouldn't only refrain from being hostile to us, she'd actually accept us. Those experts always repeated the same old checklist when trying to spot not-so-normal people like me: grandiose, manipulative, charming, lacking empathy, impulsive, yada, yada. That last one, impulsivity, nothing could be further from the truth. I had a hunch that others like me also had rules they followed. It may not be as concrete as mine, a literal checklist, but we all had rules. Keeping things in symmetry. Dare I say, a universal truth to each of us. When it came to Bianca, my gut feeling was she also had rules. She didn't want any enhancement or augmentation done on her body. Makeup, dyeing her hair, colored contacts, those were fine for her. She'd rather work her butt off exercising than have liposuction to get thinner. Plastic surgery was normal for celebrities, but as I searched the internet, it turned out Bianca was famous for being all-natural, just as Rio had mentioned. Call it instinct, or maybe relatability, I had a hunch I was seeing part of one of her major rules. Someone normal wouldn't have this kind of roundabout behavior. It might even be called impulsive. It was anything but. Since it was part of her major rule, whatever that may be, there was no way she was going to kill us. She'd want to know more information, gain connections, allies, friends, or even pawns, as much help as she could muster to successfully follow her rules, or at least not break them. Turning us away would be impossible for her. And I was right. As we stepped inside the elevator, Dean said, "Finally, we're out of there." My body's still so tensed up even after they left. She suddenly hugged me. "You were awesome back there, Errand," she said. "I don't think I could have gained that much info from her without your plan. I wouldn't have gotten that close to her at all." "I think quickly under pressure," I said, returning her hug reluctantly with an awkward tap on her shoulders. I hated being hugged. I was fine if I was the one who initiated it though. "There are still some things I don't understand. How did you know about what happens at the Eve Club?" "That's pretty easy. When Bianca mentioned the fight on Saturday night, I checked her schedule on her site and Eve was the only place that could possibly host a secret fight." "I get that, but I mean, how did you know what's going on during the fights? Remember when I got kidnapped?" I said. Dean nodded. "I overheard them talking about something like it. It wasn't clear, but it sounded like those underground illegal fights. And when they made Romello fight against the mutant, it clicked that the fights they're holding weren't between humans, maybe only one side is human." Dean's eyes widened. "I see. How clever of you to make that connection." I felt it made her believe our story even more. "The Eve is our next lead. Bianca confirmed enhanced humans join these fights. Are they going to fight normal humans? No way. It has to be other enhanced humans too. Or the mutants made by the 2MS. A wonderful thought occurred to me. How about I try getting in the fights? Isn't that free food for me? When we stepped out of the hotel, we didn't go straight to Dean's car and made our way to our hideout. I had the right to say our hideout after all the effort I had exerted in this mission. Instead, Dean and I visited a fashion boutique across the street to appear like two normal ladies out shopping. We may be overly cautious, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bianca ordered someone to watch us for a bit. I approached the nearest rack and pretended to look over the displayed clothes. They were kinda in my price range but not my style. Dean called Johan and Rio to update them on what happened. Obviously, I wasn't like other girls in a different sense than the normal use of the expression, but I was also like other girls since I did enjoy shopping for clothes online. Browsing online stores was a favorite hobby of mine. I'd add the latest arrivals I liked to my basket and have them shipped within the week. Voila! No need to wade through the seething masses of humanity at the mall, it always left me with a slight feeling of vulnerability. The thought of cute new outfits was appealing, but the process of physically acquiring them? Not so much. Waiting for ages for the sales attendant to find your size, which always happened to be the one not in stock, and queuing for the fitting room, it was certainly packed during a mall sale day. If you're going out on a shopping trip with the girls, it has got to be during a mall sale. That also meant long lines at the cashier. My God. Dean sidled beside me and checked the clothes I rummaged through. I called Johann. They decided to check out Eve. With Rio's ferry? Yes. It's Johann's day off, so he has time to guard Rio. Our next problem is how to get in that place. I'm sure we'll figure something out later when we meet the others. She picked out a light blue cardigan and held it up, comparing it with my body. I bet this looks good on you. Is this even my size? I said, taking it from her. I have a PhD in shopping, so it probably is. She picked another item. We can buy a couple of clothes so it'll look like we're shopping. I don't have anything in mind I want to buy. I usually do my shopping online. Sorry for my technologically backward ways, esteemed high priestess of online shoppers. My sincerest apologies for having offended you. Dean pretended to bow before me. I snickered. It's way faster to do it online. The real reason I hated shopping at the mall was that keeping up my face for the entire day for the same group of people was mind-numbingly boring and disgustingly exhausting. People would normally zone out and endure through all that waiting time in long lines, maybe droningly browse their phone. As for me, I had to concentrate not to let my guard down and drop my face. I always wondered what would I look like to other people without a face up. It's faster, but you don't receive it immediately. I made a face at Dean. I'm mature enough to understand the concept of delayed gratification. Careful everyone, we have a sophisticated adult here. She tried to poke my side again, but I dodged her finger. That reminds me, I do have to buy something. Let's go to a sportswear store. What are you buying? I followed her as she navigated the busy streets. Towering buildings surrounded us, cased in glass, reflecting each other in the clear blue sky, full of offices with busybodies that didn't have to deal with the bullshit I was suffering through. The lower floors of these buildings were comprised of stores and restaurants catering to the financials crowd working here, most of them young professionals. It was a kinda posh section of the city. I tried to casually inspect my surroundings to see if there was someone following us. Then I realized I had spent more time looking over my shoulder for the past week or so than I spent in ever. Sports bras, Dean said. Huh. For hiding that thing? I thought you're already wearing one for it. I'm looking for a high-impact sports bra. Something I could move around in. What for? She stopped in front of a sportswear store and stared at me. For fighting, she seriously said before entering the store. Fighting? I said, puzzled. I hurried after her. I'll need a good quality sports bra to be able to fight comfortably. To keep things in, place. I don't think I'll have a problem like that, I mumbled under my breath. I bet even Corbrings wear them, or more likely a specialized suit to stop boobs bouncing around while they fight against the adumbry. Unless being superhuman prevents that. I guess some powers do stop that, like Myra's armor. She said it's hugging her body that she doesn't have any problems, but she still wears a sports bra underneath. No, I didn't mean that, I said. You're going to fight? Like fight against people with guns and monsters? Yes, she simply said. What's your power anyway? I asked innocently. I've been trying to guess it. The only instance I knew she used it was when we looked for Romello at the hospital, but that wasn't enough for me to get a start on. I wasn't ready to give up on my minigame just yet though. Can you just give me a clue? She placed a finger on her cheek and looked at the ceiling. It's hard to think of a clue. How about you watch me later? I've asked Dario to teach me how to fight. I'll try to use my powers. You can't see it though, it's not visible like Myra's or Everett's or Rio's powers. Something along the lines of Dario's then? Yep, try to guess what it is later, she said playfully. Never in my short mortal existence here on this terrestrial plane did I expect to help a friend choose sports bras for fighting interdimensional monsters and armed men from the criminal underworld engaged in illegal human experimentation. Then again, a lot has happened that I didn't expect. It was just so funny to me that the store employees we were asking about the various features and advantages of this or that brand couldn't have guessed in a million years what Dean was buying it for. They were probably thinking that she was some ditzy blonde who was over her head trying extreme sports. Our second mission for the day completed, albeit an impromptu one, Dean and I were on our way to meeting with the others to discuss our next move. On the drive, Dean animatedly talked about how she planned to go about learning martial arts, like watching videos on the internet and trying to copy them at home as if it were some home yoga for fitness tape. For the practical part of learning, her only options were to fight against either Myra or Dario. Controlling her inhuman strength was easy for normal day-to-day tasks, but she didn't trust herself to be able to do it if she enrolled in a self-defense course or something. My mind went back to earlier musings about Bianca and impulsivity. I could somehow accept Bianca's actions were logical, but I still couldn't understand Dean's line of thinking. To me, this was the correct example of impulsivity. I interrupted Dean's lecture about why learning to fight was so important and that I should practice with her. What are you going to do after this? After what? She raised her brow while keeping her eyes on the road. After the meeting? Want to go eat somewhere? I can call Adrian and the others. Just doing normal social stuff would be nice. I meant after this, like let's say you guys stop the experiments on the innocent citizens here in the city. Or after that. Like you find who's the big bad boss behind all this and kill him, I guess. Not like you're going to surrender him to the government or the Corbrings. She pursed her lips as I mentioned the only option of killing. I suppose you're right. So after that? What do you do after you win? Dean didn't answer immediately. She tapped her fingers on the steering wheel and stared unblinkingly at the road. Did she hear me? She did. Was she ignoring the question? I was thinking of changing the topic when she said, "Then my fight will be done. I go back to my old life knowing I've done my part." Part? Meaning part in the fight against the Adumbri? Yes. Part in the service of humanity. But you don't have to do this. Can you even go back to being a human? Who knows, she said, her voice trailing off wistfully. I didn't say anything, waiting for her to continue. I haven't thought about it. Likely not. And you're okay with that? Sacrifices have to be made. I'm in a very good position to hide my condition. My family is sufficiently well off that I wouldn't have to place myself in a situation where I need to get tested. So long as I keep a fairly human form, I don't think I'll have problems later. I guess you're right. I looked out the window so she wouldn't see me smirk. She spoke as if she was a superhero in a movie. And I could tell she had thought about it even if she wouldn't admit it. But I still couldn't understand her at all. Dean and Bianca were similar in some ways. Dean was a stickler to the rules, the model student, potential student government president. Someone who, after a decade or so, was probably going to give a commencement speech to future Alois graduates, giving them motivational quotes and crap like that. And she did something completely unthinkable and opposite to what I knew of her. On the other hand, Bianca absolutely hated any surgery or enhancement on her body, yet she also did something that contradicted what people knew about her. However, I only understood, or at least could somehow relate, to one of them. Interesting. Can I also ask you something too? Dean said. Sure. What about you? Why are you helping us? You don't have an artificial core. We'll protect you, and you can still stay at my house even if you don't want to help us. I guess I'm just worried about you. Dean faced me and smiled. Thanks for being a true friend, Erin. I returned her smile. True friendship. I wonder what that feels like. The road cleared as we made our way to the ghost town part of the city. An advantage of having the hideout at this location was we could easily spot if someone followed us. And if someone did, the plan was to circle the parking lot of the abandoned mall at the side of the main avenue, go back to the city proper via the side access road, and pretend as if we weren't doing anything sketchy. No cars followed us, so we continued onwards. If the heart of La Esperanza could be described as a bustling concrete jungle, this place was a dead forest. Husks of buildings that were never filled grew out of the ground here and there, their empty frames slowly decaying through the years, a testament to the prospects of business and wealth that had gone to waste. Some of the lots didn't even have the chance to grow their dead concrete tree. There were formerly empty lots that now supported thriving ecosystems of shrubbery and weed. Dug-out foundations that have been hastily refilled. Steel columns hinting at a building that could have been. This would be a good setting for a horror movie. We drove further in. Our hideout was located inside of a building at the periphery of the former development project. There were no people there besides us. At least, that's what Dario had said. Homeless people lived inside the empty buildings on the portion of the project that bordered the city proper. I think a couple of those buildings have been turned into shelters. The people residing there could easily walk to a nearby food bank set up by a charity. Those were the structures that were mostly completed, compared to the ones around us which were probably structurally unsound since their construction was halted halfway. There was no reason for anybody else to venture further in. We entered the first floor of a building. Stretches of the sides of the structure weren't covered by walls, just thick concrete columns propping the entire thing, and perhaps piles of rubble here and there which Dean carefully navigated past. Inside, we found the two cars parked. Everett's and Myra's. I stepped out of Dean's car, smelling the fresh, clean air. This area was devoid of any graffiti or even a speck of trash. No humans, no pollution. The hideout was in a room below, but instead of going there, I followed Dean to the atrium of the building, bringing my bag with law school notes inside. I was going to pretend to study while they practiced fighting to show that I wasn't interested in what they were doing, but I intended to study them. It'd be unavoidable I'd get into fights myself in the future, and since I didn't know how to transform into my giant werewolf form, learning some fighting tips would be great. They must already be practicing, Dean said, referring to the loud crashes we were hearing. When the corridor opened up to the atrium, we were greeted by the sight of a human and a monster in combat. The human, Dario, wearing a tight-fitting, black tracksuit which showed his fit physique I hadn't made note of before, was going against a creature probably more than 1.5 of me in height covered in darkish brown bark-like armor. I knew it was Myra even though her face was also covered. What surprised me was her form. Her added height was due to curved blades jutting out from her feet, acting like the running blades prosthetics I had seen before watching the Paralympics, giving her insane speed as she whipped around the columns surrounding the atrium, then up the zigzagging staircase in the middle, trying to catch Dario. Her scythed arms lengthening, shortening, snaking through the air as Dario danced between them. "Don't worry about it," Everett said. He was sitting on a lawn chair he brought along, watching a video on his cell phone. He removed his earphones. "Blank's not going to get hurt." But that wasn't the reason I cursed. It was because I realized just now how strong Myra was at full power. If she didn't drink the blue vial, the suppressor, back then when she attacked us at the mall, I would already be dead. For a few seconds, Dean and I processed the battle in front of us. I had seen on TV how Corbrings, or even bid agents wearing Comexo power armors, fought up close and personal against fully transformed Adumbri. It was a whole different thing witnessing with my own two eyes a fight between a superhuman and a monster. What if I was the one facing off a monster? What if I fought Myra now? Without the suppressor, she'd cut me to ribbons. I strongly suggest you don't come close to them, Everett said. He sat up straight and shrugged. Or actually you can, but not too close, then come back here. Why? What's wrong? I asked. You'll get in range of Blank's power. I'm not good at estimating how far its reach is, but the outer edge should be near us. It's good to experience some of it though. Dean continued walking forward, so I followed her. Information is power. I was a fish out of water. Come to think of it, I wasn't even a fish anymore, but definitely out of the water, and even more clueless than a fish on dry land about this new world I was dropped in. Learning about their powers may lead me to learn more about mine. Half a dozen steps forward, I realized my head started to throb, signaling the beginning of a bad headache. Pressure gradually built up in my ears like I was flying on an airplane with a bad case of a cold, and I wanted to pop my ears but couldn't. It wasn't that awful of a feeling. The time I got a hangover in high school after getting drunk at our graduation party was worse. That was also the time I swore never to drink again. Was this one of Dario's abilities? A field around him that made people feel sick. We were pretty far from him, about the distance from the uppermost seat of the lecture hall of Professor Gallagher's class to the teacher's table. Come on, let's get closer, Dean said to me. I didn't realize I stopped walking, deep in thought about Dario's power. She held my hand and pulled me. Don't be scared, she said, totally assuming the wrong thing. The sickening sense increased and my vision got slightly hazy at the edges. What made it worse was that it wasn't bringing full-on pain but more a needling sensation of discomfort that I couldn't identify, as if someone was scratching a chalkboard with their nails inside my head. I tried to focus on what Myra and Dario were doing. They were at the second landing of the huge skeletal staircase. Myra sliced at Dario, alternating her left and right blades, mixing in slashes from blades that suddenly spurted out of her elbows to catch him off guard. He easily parried the attacks with his bare hands like some kung fu master in those old Chinese movies Dad used to watch, redirecting swords with their palms. I recalled Dario said when we first met that he was physically weaker than Myra, which was pretty obvious now with her monstrous form, but he didn't seem to break a sweat even when she was attacking him seriously. I think this is enough, I told Dean. Memories of my hangover episode were coming back, and I absolutely detested being reminded of the stupid decisions in my life. Sorry, she said with concern in her voice. You might be feeling worse than me with your normal body. I grimaced. It's not a good feeling, that's for sure. We returned to where Everett was lounging on his lawn chair. A red cooler was beside him with a paper bag on its lid. He stood up and offered the paper bag to us, or more specifically to Dean. You want some food? The smell of beefy goodness and sweet onions filled the air as he opened the bag. Splotches of grease covered the bottom of the pouch. Dean struggled not to recoil from it. It's some burgers, you can get one, he said. Thanks, Dean said, uncertainly peering inside. This is our go-to meal. We're usually in a rush to get here because it's so far, so we just buy some burgers from a drive-thru before coming here. We can't exactly have pizza delivered to this place. Dean accepted the offer and chose a cheeseburger from the looks of its yellow wrapper. It was from Beef Galore, a place I sometimes went to if I wanted to binge eat, feel good, and then feel crappy afterward, which was usually the case after I was forced to attend a social event I really didn't want to go to. Always takeout though. I looked weird eating burgers following rule number 2. From the way Dean delicately picked up the burger from the bag with the tip of her fingers, I got the impression she hadn't eaten a fast food burger before. Have you ever set foot inside a fast food restaurant? I said. She blushed. Yes, I have. Aha. What, where, and when? Johnny Racks, at 22nd, besides that I think hardware store, about 2 months ago. What did you eat there? Spicy baby back ribs. Am I being interrogated, officer? Your answers are too specific and too fast to be true. But you'll be a good witness on the stand. Grinning, I grabbed the paper bag from her. Just admit you've never eaten at a fast food joint before. I chose a burger too. Try these out. These are good. She rolled her eyes. Fine, you got me. I can call Rio, Everett hastily said. See if they can buy pizza or whatever you want on their way here. He seemed a bit embarrassed about the burgers. The other thing I can offer you now are drinks. He opened the red cooler. Only got root beer and soda though. Both of us went for root beer, Dean more of just following what I got. We looked around for a place to seat but there was no other chair and dust covered everything. It's fine, we can just sit here, Dean said, pointing to the steps that lined the perimeter of the atrium. Erin, do you have a spare paper there? I plucked out a page from my printouts and gave it to her. Are you sure you're done with this? She said. Yeah, I already finished reading and making notes about it. Dean placed the paper on the steps and sat on it. Good idea, I thought, copying her. I would have just sat on the floor no problem and dusted my butt off after. I put on my fake glasses and flipped through my notes to our next assigned cases for constitutional law class. I always printed out the full cases as well as their briefs, reading the case briefs first then skimming through the case in full, lastly, making notes on important matters which I predicted the professors were going to ask. But this time, the notes I took down were about Dario and his team. Everett, I said while nonchalantly pretending to study. I can call you Everett, right? Or should I call you MC since we're here at the hideout? Everett is fine. Everett then, thanks. Anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, Dario's power is sort of short-circuiting people's brains when touching them, I said, and then this area around him where we get headaches when we enter? Yes, those are the two forms of Blank's power. You have experienced the first one. He can control its intensity, but he usually doesn't fully use it. Can he fry someone's brain with it? That's what he wants to avoid. He said he prefers to shoot someone than make them lose their minds. He hasn't tried doing it yet though. How about the second one? It's more complicated than the first. He has a hard time controlling this invisible field around him, both its range and effects. It used to be only a meter around him and gave a mild headache to anyone inside. As his powers developed, every one of us grew our abilities through time and training. The range got bigger. I'm not sure how many meters is its radius now. And, yeah, the effects also increased. It's still the usual mild headache when you're in its fringes, but it gets worse the closer you get. It's like you're having vertigo if you're near him. If you're as close to him as Barb is now, you can add a bad case of migraine to that as well as nausea. Depends on the person. Wow, that's powerful, I said, nibbling at my pen to act casual. Especially, if you don't know about it and suddenly got hit with it. Main disadvantage is that friend and foe alike will get affected. Our solution is we have to train inside it to get used somewhat to the negative effects. We being mainly me and Barb. Sometimes we can force Oberon to try it, but he hates it and he likes to stay away from the action, his fairies as his proxy. To be candid, I also hate being inside Blank's field. I sometimes vomit when I'm next to him. Myra is right beside him now. She seems to be doing fine. Her armor protects her from the effects of Dario's power. Not one bit. That's sheer determination for you. Lately, she's been insistent to practice with Blank. For long periods too. Normally, 10 minutes and she had to take a rest, but right now they've been going on for nearly 20 minutes already. Probably because of Kelsey, Dean said. Oh yeah. Myra's sister was the start of this shit I was in. I hadn't thought about her at all, but that was because I didn't care about whether she was still alive or not. She was likely dead, smashed up against the rocks below the cliff or something stupid like that. But her body should have turned up somewhere. Waves wash up dead bodies ashore, right? I've seen that happen a few times in the crime scene documentaries Mom and I used to watch. Yes, Everett said. We still don't know where to find her. There's a large chance she's at the Red Island. That's why Barb is practicing fervently now. We should all be prepared. This is the closest we've gotten to finding Red Island. Does Johann practice with blank too? Dean asked. Would it be more awful for normal people? She turned to me, I'm very sorry, Erend, for dragging you inside. I don't think there's going to be much difference between us and normal humans when it comes to blank's power. From my understanding, we still have human physiology, even Barb under all her tree armor, so we can get headaches just the same. We could get stunned too. Fortunately, Barb's armor does protect her from stun guns and other electroshock weapons. I scribbled some notes about the case I was reading because Dean peered over what I was writing. I see. The 2MIS crew will have lots of stun weapons because they're dealing with mutants and their Adumbri experiments. Rofirio and his goons did have stun batons. Electroshock weapons are the most effective in dealing with Adumbri, the regular-sized ones anyway. Guns wouldn't do much against super-fast healing unless you have plenty of high-powered firearms, armor-piercing rounds, exploding rounds. At that point, you're just trying to kill them faster than they can heal. A gun could also work if you could land the perfect headshot. But if the goal is to control them, then shocking is the way. Isn't it something with the brain being the way Adumbris manifest in our world? That's the main reason why shocking them is preferred over shooting. If you can blow off their head, sure, go ahead. If not, better to shock them to interfere with their powers, which does include healing. And then you can shoot them or restrain them. Don't get electrocuted at all costs. I wrote right beside the paragraph where the Supreme Court examined the history of the Bill of Rights. In the next paragraph, I randomly outlined some sentences then wrote, buy a stun gun. Would stun guns available in online stores be enough? I knew I had to get permits if I was to try to buy something stronger, something that could probably kill a person. Dean said, isn't Barb impervious with her armor on? I recall someone saying that her armor is bulletproof. Stun guns won't work on her either. If she keeps her armor up, doesn't that mean that nothing can stop her? Bulletproof against normal bullets, Everett explained. She's not as durable as a tank or the armor of Comexos. There are guns made to shoot through those, and they could shoot through Barb's armor for sure. Specialized electroshock weapons can also incapacitate her. The 2MS had an enforcer augmented with something that could shock Barb through her armor. We barely escaped with our lives that time. My ears perked up. You said, had. Past tense. He's dead now. Did you kill him? No. He was there at the docks when we rescued you. The Adumbri that went on a rampage ate him. Oh, that guy. Everett probably meant the guy with metal arms that packed quite a punch and then exploded. He gave Myra a hard time. I just tore him apart. One less problem for us, I said. Everett nodded in agreement. Dean suddenly stood up beside me. What is it? I asked her. Blank and Barb finished fighting. I'm going to ask them to teach me. What a weird tableau, Dario lecturing a tree monster covered in blades how to fight. As they approached us, he pointed to various blades jutting out of Myra's armor and made motions in the air demonstrating how to perform certain moves. It felt so surreal that it made me wonder if this was all a dream. Or maybe I did die and my soul was trapped in the limbo dimension of spooky Erend. Standing equal to the tallest NBA players, her blade feet extensions contributing the most to her height, thorny tree monster Myra presented an imposing form. The full-face helmet of bark-like material covered in spikes made her head look disproportionately bigger compared to the rest of her body. The especially thick helmet was obviously for protecting her, or maybe I should say, our most vulnerable part. If something happened to our brain, we can say goodbye to our regeneration and powers. Tiny slits for eye holes meant her field of vision was limited. A thick collar grew out of her body armor, protecting her neck, but also somewhat restricting the movement of her head. When she turned to face Dario, I noticed dense overlapping plates running down the center of her back. Did that mean it wasn't only the brain I should protect, but the spine as well? Myra retracted the blades on her wrist, elbows, and knees. Even though she could grow blades anywhere on her body, I assumed she chose to do so on her joints for easy and comfortable usage. But I would have to watch out in case she grew a blade out of her ass or somewhere unexpected to sneak a hit in. Her dagger-tipped fingers unraveled, her arms shortening to their normal length as the bark was reabsorbed into her skin. Bite her real arm, I jotted down. She wobbled for a moment as the blades on her legs softened, untangled themselves, and receded into her soles, bringing her feet down to the floor. The blade extensions meant longer strides, and with cadence far surpassing a normal human's, her running speed would be insane. My first thought was to zigzag if she were to chase me because the blades were rigid and it would be hard for her to turn or stop, but if she could control their flexibility then that plan might not pan out. Oddly, she didn't throw any spikes at Dario. Was it because she had a limit on how much of this bark-like substance she could produce and maintain at a time? If that was the case, it made sense if she'd rather concentrate on making all of them into armor to protect herself and keep some backup to repair her armor if it was chipped away. Throwing spikes would be throwing away her own protection. Or the likelier reason was she didn't want us, specifically Dean and I, to recognize her as the same person who attacked us at the mall. Probably a combination of both reasons. I squeezed the buns of my beef galore burger, pushing down the patty into the wrapper. I had to eat the buns first. I turned away from Dean so she wouldn't notice the way I ate burgers, although the wrappers covered the weird shit I was doing. She hadn't touched her burger. I also didn't really care for a burger, but I figured eating what was offered to me showed goodwill and a sense of belongingness, like an explorer eating the food offered by an indigenous tribe to foster good relations. "Hey, guys," Myra said, as the last pieces of her armor disappeared. Barefoot with only a black sports bra and matching black cycling shorts covering her fairly toned body, she looked totally out of place in an abandoned building. Not that her monster form was a better fit in the setting. Dario unzipped his jacket and took it off, revealing a gray tank top that showed off his muscles. "Hi, Dean, Aaron, did you guys enjoy the show?" he said half-jokingly. "Why was everyone so fit around here? I should also start working out." "But how?" "When I used to religiously maintain a routine at the gym, I used 20-pound dumbbells, which wasn't much, I know, but hey, they did their job. With my current situation, however, I could probably juggle 20-pound dumbbells if I knew how. Really heavy weights might do the trick, but a short petite girl curling a 50-pound dumbbell would surely draw inquiring stares." "We enjoyed the show." "Sure beats anything on TV," Dean said. I simply nodded and peeped a small, hello. Dario wiped his body with a towel he tucked in the waistband of his pants. "MC, can you give me something to drink?" Everett threw him a can. When he twisted his body in Everett's direction to catch it, I noticed he had a huge tattoo on his back, with parts of it stretching across his rear delts and up the nape of his neck. I couldn't quite make out what it was because most of it was covered by his tank top. "How's your leg?" Everett said. "Fully healed. As if it were never cut off." Myra folded her arms. "And here I was thinking to hold back because of your injury." "Did you hold back?" She grinned. "No," all of them laughed, and I just added my weak chuckle to the mix. Nice laugh, everyone. I feel so included. Dean gasped. "Your leg was cut off." "I only knew about your arm injury. My arm completely healed when the suppressor wore off. My leg injury is different." It was during our fight with Jim Ambrose about a week before we met you guys. We tried ambushing their delivery truck thinking it probably held their experiments, but it turned out Big Marcy's goons were waiting inside for us. But that's not a problem for you, right? You can knock them out. Normally it's not, but that was when we discovered Jim Ambrose has an auxiliary adrenaline system. What's that? AAS, it pumps the blood with a concoction of drugs to resuscitate the user. It has other features, but I'm guessing that's what happened, I said. They all stared at me. My mom is a consultant at Greaves, so I picked up a few things here and there. Everett whistled in amazement. Greaves was one of the big players in the bioaugmentronics industry. That's exactly what happened, Dario said. We call it zombie mode. I admit it was a huge blunder on my part. Fortunately, my leg was merely cut off, not blown apart. I don't think I can grow a new one. Barb grabbed my leg as we retreated and I was able to reconnect it with my own regeneration. Dean said with a serious tone, I have mentally prepared myself for the dangers I might face going into this, but hearing about what our enemies are actually capable of, it's a different matter altogether. Preparation prevents mistakes from happening. While we can't plan ahead for everything, we try, as much as possible, to discount variables that could hinder us. And we need intel to prepare. Obey relayed to me a general view of what happened. But I'd like to hear from you how the mission went. It went awesomely well, Dean said. She narrated what we did, praising me for my quick thinking. I acted embarrassed, looking at the floor while sipping my root beer. You don't have to be shy, she said. I was about to walk right up to Bianca and wing it as we went along, but she would have easily seen through me and not divulge anything. The best lie would have some truth mixed in, I said. It works even better if the true parts are the unexpected ones. Then I realized the irony of my statement. Amazingly well put, Dario said. Going into focus now. We're approaching a crucial portion of attaining our goal of ending the experiments here in our city and catching the Adumbri in the Bid Division proxy. Thanks to Dean and Errand, we have a lead on where to go next. This is our best shot at finding the Red Island. And finding Kelsey, Myra added. Yes, Kelsey as well. We shouldn't squander this opportunity. When Oberon and Johann arrive, we'll move on to planning. For now, I have something to ask of you, Dean. What is it? Can you help us in our upcoming fights? Dean's face lit up. Yes, of course, I will. She answered so quickly that Dario was taken aback. Wait. Don't give me an answer so fast. You have to carefully think about it first. Fighting is a very different thing from what you just did with Bianca. Don't get me wrong, we couldn't have pulled that off ourselves. But asking you to be in the middle of the battle fighting alongside us is magnitudes above it. I wouldn't have asked you if it were a different situation, truly. However, we have a concrete chance of locating the Red Island. When we do, we are going to attack it. And we'd need all the help we can get. I have thought about it, Dean said. I wouldn't have volunteered for the Bianca mission if I hadn't prepared myself for this. We have revealed ourselves to Bianca. This means that we're in danger if, in the future, she becomes one of the Adumbri clients of the 2MS. She can easily find out we were lying and send her people to chase us. Which means we should succeed now. And I'm willing to put my life on the line now. Dario, Myra, and Everett were shocked into silence with Dean's speech filled with conviction, unsure of what to say next, and looking even a bit embarrassed. Cogs turned inside my head at her statement. If she already anticipated there was a chance we'd be in mortal peril because we revealed our true identities to Bianca, then. Wait a minute. I couldn't even get angry at her because I was just so amazed at her thought process. I did want to find out where the Red Island was located for my reasons, so no harm done. She wasn't like me, I was sure of that. I could barely put myself in her shoes to figure out what was going on inside her head, which I was very good at with both normal people and others similar to me. Was she a different species altogether? Fascination crept into my mind. Dario cleared his throat to break the awkward silence after Dean's speech. Then we will teach you how to fight. I was already going to ask you to teach me. And I also want to try out my powers. Your powers? It was some time since you melded with the artificial core. But we didn't ask you about it yet because I feel it's a personal thing. Your powers might have weaknesses that you wouldn't want to share, and we wanted to wait until you trusted us enough to share them on your own. Dean bent down to remove her gladiator-style, high-heeled, summer sandals. If it's not too imposing, can we have like a mock battle? Do go easy on me. You can try to guess what my powers are. Sure. Dario shrugged reluctantly. Do you have any experience fighting? I took up taekwondo lessons when I was a kid because my mother was adamant a girl should know how to protect herself. But it was just a casual thing, and I hated those lessons, so I made every effort to miss them. I pretty much stopped in high school. To answer your question, I emphasize, please go super easy on me. Dario moved away from us, then beckoned Dean to come attack him. She approached him, walking cautiously, and stopped a few feet from him, sizing him up. She held up her fists in front of her, unsure of what to do. Go ahead, he said. She aimed a kick to his torso before he could finish his sentence. He made a tiny hop backward to avoid it, but she stopped mid-kick and pulled back her leg. There was no need for him to get out of the way. Dean lost her balance a bit with that bizarre maneuver, but she quickly put her foot back on the ground to stabilize. She lunged at Dario, awkwardly swinging her left fist. He almost lazily put up his hand to catch it, but she didn't finish the punch, twisting her body to pull it back and then throwing her right fist instead, which Dario easily avoided with one step back. What's up with that? I heard Myra mutter. Although it was obvious that Dean presented zero threat, Dario's eyes were wide in amazement. He still had his hand up, the one which was supposed to catch her punch, as if he was in shock. Dean pushed forward with amateurish kicks and punches, which made me cringe internally so much that I thought my stomach was already putting the burger I ate back together like a jigsaw puzzle. What made it even more painful to watch as she kept on stopping and pulling her punches and kicks, and doing weird moves like ducking even when Dario wasn't doing anything. Come on, attack me, Dean said, backing up. She held up her hands. I would just like to qualify my statement that it wasn't meant as an arrogant challenge, but as it's your turn now to attack. Dario chuckled, then I felt a wave of an invisible force that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I felt clammy, my skin rubbery, and my brain and stomach were doing somersaults. Hopping on the balls of his feet, Dario closed the distance to Dean and gave her a light jab. She stepped to the left, about to meet Dario's other fist, but she ducked down and it passed harmlessly over her head. Everett cheered her on. We all knew Dario was just playing around, but I must admit it looked cool when Dean evaded his punches. Dario's attacks steadily became faster and faster. Dean didn't even try to hit back anymore, concentrating on evading them, stepping back continuously, giving ground to him. What? I don't understand, she exclaimed. She attempted a half sideways jump while ducking, got her legs tangled up, then fell on her butt. Are you okay? Dario said, extending his hand. I give up, she said with a laugh as he pulled her up. I'm just too slow to keep up. If my guess is right, you have a powerful ability. What is it? Myra asked. Does it have something to do with her weird movements? Before Dean could explain, Dario cut her off. Dean earlier said we should guess. I have a good idea of what it is, let's hear yours. Okay, Myra said, so it looks like Dean's predicting Blank's moves. Heightened senses. Hyper-intuition. She's doing things even before Blank made a move in a certain direction, Everett said. She's also stopping her punches and kicks way too early for hyper-intuition. And she's also evading weirdly. Myra said, Blank, I know we're doing a guessing game, but we should be able to ask you questions since you were the one who fought her. Dario gestured for her to go ahead, and she said, "Did you think about doing specific moves to attack or block her?" "Of course, I think about it." "What do you mean?" "Come on. Don't play dumb. I bet when you tried to catch her fist and she didn't follow through finishing her punch, you thought she had mind-reading powers." "That would be my first assumption too. If it were me, I'd think of various fake ways I'm going to attack and check her reaction and how she moved." "Did you do that? And did she react the way you expected her to?" "It crossed my mind. But if Dean's power is mind-reading, then she'd see through the fake intentions. Instead, I cleared my head and relied on instinct, mostly focusing on reacting. Even if she could read my mind, she doesn't have experience fighting and would process it too slowly. I gradually increased my speed in attacking for that reason. With enough speed, it'll be as if she wouldn't have mind-reading powers anyway." "Oops, you're right. That's smart." I discounted the possibility of mind-reading. The way she moved was incompatible with it. It's more like she knew my next few moves before I thought of them. She's trying to evade them all way in advance because she doesn't have the skills to avoid them as they come. If it's not mind-reading or hyper-intuition, is it prescience?" Everett said. Myra frowned. "Prescience? Precognition, future sight, foreknowledge. Fancy terms. But seriously, precognition? Do core-brings even have someone who can predict the future?" Dario said, "There are rumors of core-bring precogs. Our population has exploded since the end of World War II, but we are living in relatively peaceful times. One would think the Adumbri seeding rate will increase proportionally with population, but we have only this one purple bloom at Madagascar for the last several years, compared to multiple at the same time at the start of the Adumbri invasion. It's not far-fetched to assume core-brings have precogs detecting future disasters. And if core-brings can have this power, then we also have a chance of manifesting such a power, even if only a weaker version of it. Precognition is also my guess." "Wait," I said. Jumping into the discussion here. "I'm going to share how we found Romello's room in the hospital, if that's okay with you, Dean." She assented, so I told them about it. That couldn't have been precognition, right? She couldn't check the future to know where we should go because we don't know where to go in the first place. Unless Dean was checking the past. What floor the cop came from? Future and past sight. Our guessing game went on for a few more minutes until Dario put a stop to it and said, "So, Dean, what is it?" "Our best guess right now is that you have visions rewinding the past and fast-forwarding to the future." Dean giggled. "I wish it were that, then I wouldn't have a hard time figuring out what to do." Precognition is close, but also not. She took a deep breath before the big reveal. "I have something I call a guardian angel," she said, waving to space above her right shoulder. Myra gave an incredulous snort. "A guardian angel? A summon like obeys? We can't see it." Dario and Everett echoed Myra. I also couldn't see anything out of place near Dean. "It's invisible, but it's there. I tested it with the security cameras at home, it doesn't show up. I also ordered a thermal and infrared camera online, and I even bought those ghost hunting cameras. I'm not sure if they're real. By the way, Aaron, those were the boxes I was trying to hide from you last week. Nothing is showing up. I think only I can see it. What does it look like?" "A cute baby gargoyle shaped like an egg made of ivory with faint gold, feathery wings. And only I can touch it. It's incorporeal for other people and things. This guardian angel of yours, how does it work?" "It can see the past and the future. Only the future. Possible futures to be exact, and it's processing them at lightning speed. I know this because when I tried touching it one time, it shared its thoughts with me." Dean shuddered at the memory. It was just too much. The result was me curled up on the floor of my room, having a severe seizure, my nose bleeding. My head hurt so bad I was bawling. I concentrated on not screaming because Sis and Aaron were in the house. Was that the night you didn't go out of your room and suddenly cancelled your date with Adrian? I said, checking Everett's reaction to what I said. Yes, that was it. And it wasn't a date. She glared at me. To be fair, my guardian angel did tell me I wouldn't do that if I were you when I reached for it. That's basically how it works. It processes things and just tells me inside my head what to do. During the fight with Dario, it says stuff like, he'll catch your hand when you punch or a left kick, and so on. For that time at the hospital, I assume it scanned the possible futures for each button in the elevator and it told me, I'd press 6 if I were you. It's more than just seeing the future. But, technically it's my guardian angel doing all that. It then just tells me what to do given the situation. I've never heard of an ability similar to that before, Dario said. I suppose I have to share my weaknesses too. Disclaimer alert, this is all my observation. I'm still not 100% sure of how it works, especially its limitations. We'll help you figure it out. That's what we're here for. We all had to go through that process. Eventually, you'll understand your power. Taking a guess, the main weakness is its range. In response to Dean's astonished face, he said, that wasn't some brilliant deduction. All of us start like that. Not just us, Adumbri and the real core brings too. We are technically affecting the world with energy from a higher dimension. Start small. As we get the hang of it and siphon more power from a world, not ours, our abilities are amplified. I'd say that's the main weakness. I snapped my fingers. Is that the reason why you always wanted me close to you when you said you can protect me with your powers? Exactly, Dean said. I can tell if something bad was about to happen to you if you're next to me. Let's say someone's about to shoot you, my guardian angel might say, pull Aaron down, or something to that effect. But if you were in another room, it's not going to tell me to run over to you to save you. If it's going to tell me to do something or use a certain object, I have to be near that person or item for it to prompt. Like the elevator buttons, I said. Dean nodded in agreement. If someone is going to shoot you from afar, a sniper for example, Myra mused, it's not going to tell you anything. I think it will. Let's say if I go out of a building I'll get shot by a waiting sniper, my guardian angel would see the future me dead on the ground and tell me to just stay inside. It predicts what happens to me and those within a short radius of me. And it's not just a limitation on physical distance. The distance in time is also affected. Sorry, I don't know how to properly word it. Dario said, I get it. You mean how far into the future it's scanning possibilities and then advising you what to do? That's it. During our fight, it's pretty obvious it's telling me something in the immediate future, a few seconds forward. But for the elevator thing, and this is just my guess here, it scanned the consequences for each button maybe for 10 minutes in the future. I'm not sure yet what my limit is, but I'm sure it won't alert me about something an hour into the future. The consolation is it will tell me how to avoid or mitigate the bad outcome maybe 10 minutes before it's coming. In that sense, I have to be careful in deciding to follow what it says because I might end up in a scenario where I shouldn't have entered an hour ago and now I don't have any way out. Damn, that's still useful as heck, Myra said. Despite its limitations, we can avoid plenty of dangers with it. The other weakness, at least I consider it as one, is the advice given by my guardian angel is short. It doesn't elaborate on things. The advice to choose the 6th floor at the hospital could have meant Romello was on the 6th floor, which it did. But in a different situation, it could mean go to the 6th floor, even if Romello wasn't there because the other floors are dangerous. During the Bianca mission earlier, it told me to go along with Aaron. Just that. See, your guardian angel thinks I'm trustworthy, I said with a smile. These short advice, it may be minimizing the scope of the instruction so that the safe future option won't be affected much, Dario guessed. I hypothesize that when your guardian angel processes what to tell you, it includes possibilities of your actions when given certain advice. This might be a safeguard to keep the advice as relevant as possible for the next 10 minutes or so that it calculated the future. I didn't get much of that, Myra said. But having something that could calculate the future is a huge benefit on the side of the good guys. This is merely the start of it, Dario reminded her. When Dean's power develops, I'm sure she can do more things with her guardian angel. I made a mental note I should be mindful of my actions when Dean was around. On the other hand, her powers could also be helpful to me someday. Dario and Dean continued with their practice. Their names sound good for a talk show, the Dario and Dean Show, or Learning to Fight a Dumbry with Dario and Dean. Determined to learn, it was evident that Dean was giving it her all, even asking Dario to activate his field for a few seconds at a time to adapt to its effects. They distanced themselves away from us so I wouldn't puke burger and root beer slushy all over the place. Everett continued watching videos on his phone, sunbathing in the rays of light pouring from the wide opening high above the atrium that would have been covered by a glass ceiling if the building's construction was finished. As for Myra, she went down to get dressed and catch a nap. I'd been to their hideout before. It was a small dingy room they cleaned up and outfitted with various second-hand furniture they brought over to make them comfortable. I switched to studying for real. My talk with Dean about what she planned to do after this was all over came to mind. She was correct. Someone rich enough could avoid getting tested. The trick was to stay as human in appearance as possible and not invite suspicion. I did keep an ear open to eavesdrop on Dario's and Dean's conversations if there was anything important. She asked him where he learned to fight. Something vague about a stint with the Free Will Initiative was his answer. That explained his motivation to fight a Dumbry, and his skills and know-how. Was it connected with the tattoo on his back? It didn't look like any of the logos of the initiative and its affiliated organizations. After an hour or so, Johan and Rio arrived bringing a couple of boxes of pizza. They brought a foldable table and plastic chairs from the hideout, and we had a mini pizza party in the middle of the abandoned building. Eerie but scenic. The heist planning montage part of the movie began. Which didn't amount to much because Rio couldn't get Sneak, his stealth fairy, into the secret area of the Eve Club. VIP lounge, there's gotta be a VIP room in a club, Rio continued, ignoring Myra. I couldn't find anything. It was cool inside, I'll give them that, and looks expensive as hell, but that doesn't make sense for their exclusivity policy. The problem is if no one goes to that secret room, or even opens it, then Sneak can't get in. I tried attaching Sneak to various people, but nada. The heck? We're not even sure if it's the right place. Myra said. Dean, did your angel tell you anything when Bianca invited you to Eve? No, but it couldn't have anyway. That's too far in the future, remember? It's the right place, Rio insisted. We saw Stella guarded by Decano inside. Too bad they were already leaving when we arrived. At least we're sure of the location, Dario said. For Dean's and my benefit, he explained, Stella is the personal assistant or executive secretary of Big Marcy. We're not exactly sure what's her position, but it's quite high up. Decano is one of the Augs of Big Marcy. Strong guy. Myra scoffed, his system is not as sophisticated as Jim Ambrose's, so I'm not afraid of him. They probably don't open the secret area of the club unless there's a scheduled fight. It has to be this Saturday. The question is what to do. We get in, of course. Rio said. Dean and Aaron can do some undercover gig again. If confirmed something sketchy is inside, they call us, we bust the place up. Dario said, how does that help us in finding the Red Island though? Rio held up a finger, put it down, and shrugged. Dario continued, we have to focus on our goal. There's no benefit if we attack the place. There's no way they're keeping their experiments at Eve, right? Everett said. Too dangerous. If I were in their shoes, I'll have the monster delivered on the day of the fight. As close to the fight as possible. I wouldn't want it stored at the club for too long. Look at what happened at the docks when one of their monsters escaped. Correct. We need the delivery truck and where it's going after. Johan. Sure thing, Johan said, giving a thumbs up. I'll just work into the night later at the office, we'll say overtime, need to finish something, then hack the computer of the boys at Accidents and Collisions, tap into the metro traffic feed records. I'll get the records of the traffic cam feeds of the streets around Eve for every Saturday for the past 3 months should be enough. We'll make copies and share the footage with the 7 of us. The more eyes looking for a suspicious truck, the better. It's Thursday now. We should aim to find a lead by tomorrow so we can plan by Saturday. With the meeting done, we went our separate ways. Dean was desperate for a hot shower after her intense workout, so we returned to her house. I was pretty full from the greasy fast food I ate, so I decided to go to bed early. Another normal day done. Sunlight bathed my face, nudging me out of sleep. I had always drawn the thick curtain shades of the guest room I was staying in because that was what I was used to in my condo. "Is that you, Dean?" I grumbled, assuming she entered the room and pulled the curtains open to wake me up. What time is wait, what? Hard ground was beneath me. I was no longer cradled by comfy pillows and a springy mattress, the last state I was certain I was in before I fell asleep. Instead, my cheek rested on a cold, rough surface. I immediately got up, adrenaline rushing through my body, pumping my heart into hyperdrive and driving away the drowsiness instantly. As I jumped to my feet, I found myself in an enclosed dome-shaped space that looked like it was carved out of solid rock. It was large enough to fit maybe 2 of Dean's house, with the ceiling as high as the utility pole out in the street. The air was musty and damp. I'm going to get so angry if I got kidnapped again. What I mistook for sunlight was actually an item glowing bright yellow in the center of the cavern, suspended by invisible forces in defiance of gravity in the middle of a pillar of water continuously pouring from the ceiling to a hole in the ground. It was an exquisite golden gauntlet, its fingers ending in wicked claws. I recognized it instantly. Spooky Aaron's gauntlet. I breathed slowly to calm myself. Although annoyed, I relaxed knowing I was somewhere safe. Spooky Aaron wouldn't hurt me, right? After all, she was the one who saved me from certain death. Where was I anyway? This wasn't the place I previously met her. Good thing I was not naked this time. I wore the clothes I went to sleep in. That also meant I was barefoot. The glowing gauntlet wasn't the only source of light in this cavern. Curious bioluminescent flora, unlike any I had seen on Earth, littered various spots of the cavern, the meager kaleidoscope of lights they gave off trying to survive under the glare of Spooky Aaron's gauntlet. Perhaps even more curious were the broken pillars and statues around me, like I was in the ruins of an ancient civilization. These statues, as well as the carvings on the pillars, sometimes depicted humans but were mostly of creatures that probably came from some mythology I wasn't familiar with. So, what do I do now? 6 archways, evenly spaced throughout the perimeter of the cavern, appeared to be the only means of exit. Gaping maws of darkness that the light of the gauntlet couldn't pierce. Or I can take the gauntlet. Spooky Aaron didn't seem to be around. I made my way to it, climbing over the rubble and carefully avoiding the alien plants. As I struggled to get over a thick column that has fallen over, I realized I didn't feel as strong as before. Or maybe the correct thing to say was that I was as weak as before I had gotten powers. Even my feet hurt walking over the gravel and uneven ground. I had my normal body back in this weird place. When I reached the middle of the room, I couldn't see any way to get to the gauntlet floating in the downpour like a salmon swimming up a waterfall. If I still had my super strength I could have stacked these ruins to get to it, or threw a rock to try to dislodge it. I reached for the falling water with my index finger, tensed, ready to run away if something bad happened. My fingertip poked through the wall of cold water. A bell chimed somewhere. I jumped back and looked around for the source of the sound. Nothing. However, One of the archways lit up, blue fire tracing the arch with incomprehensible writing. The lines of fire entered the corridor, creeping along the walls and the ceiling, illuminating the hallway like a runway at the airport. That was my next path, I guess. Several minutes passed. Or maybe an hour. Possibly 2. I wasn't sure anymore. All I knew was my feet were sore and my knees tired. It felt like I'd been walking this corridor for a long time and I couldn't recall when I started walking. No end was in sight. Was this some loopy dream thing? Not that I was worried about getting trapped here. Spooky errand needed me outside. Last time this happened, I returned to the normal world with barely any passage of time even though I stayed quite a while in Spooky Errand's dimension. I could take my time getting to the end of this path. A troubling thought needled my mind. What if she had already taken over my body? Was that why I had my weak, normal body now? Was this the real me? The human me? And now I was trapped here forever. What now? The corridor stretched far in front of me. I turned back and found that it was the same. Wait a minute. Was this the way forward? Or back? Did it matter? I paused to consider. No. Not really. I should have been dead before anyway, so Spooky Erin could have that body since she was the one who saved it. My only regret was I couldn't see what kind of monster my body transformed into when Spooky Erin manifests herself into my world. I bet she was going to be gigantic and powerful, and she'd probably be the type of Adumbry that retained its consciousness instead of those lesser ones that mindlessly rampaged until they were eliminated. The city was going to be a war zone. Call the army, the super soldiers of the bid, Comexo units, the Corbrings. As for me, just keep walking. A gigantic double-winged door appeared in front of me out of nowhere after I didn't know how long, signaling the end of my journey. Ancient and made of dark metal, it was adorned with ominous carvings of wolves, fangs, and claws. I approached it, placed my palms against it, and tried to push it. But I was too weak. How do I open this thing? To answer my thoughts, the door slowly opened on its own, the ground grumbling beneath my soles. It led to yet another cavern. Perhaps this one was smaller than the previous one, but I couldn't exactly tell because it was shrouded in darkness except for the places touched by the light of the blue flame from the corridor. I entered the room. The fire did not follow me. I didn't dare go further inside and plunge myself into darkness. Something was inside here, far in the back of the huge room. Hints of its fur caught the blue light, giving me an idea of its shape. It was incredibly colossal, a wall of fierce fur and powerful muscles, and it appeared to be curled up at the end of the room. Chains bound it, reflecting hints of the light from outside. I couldn't see most of it, but I felt it was familiar. It was like my transformation during my rampage at the docks. This was bigger. Far bigger. Hello, a voice said inside my head in a sing-song way. There was no sound, the greeting simply popped inside my head like I was the one who thought of it. Someone, presumably the speaker, hugged me from behind and squeezed hard, nearly knocking the wind out of me. "I missed me so much," she said. I turned my head to see who it was and found myself face to face with a Talia drama mask, the laughing mask of theater. The mask was divided down the middle, one side colored white, the other black. Cracks ran all over the mask, even squiggling across the lines of golden metal that radiated from its eye sockets. Peeking through those holes were tantalizing red eyes with an unearthly glow, more beautiful than the finest jewelry I'd seen. It was Spooky Errand. Who else could it be? "Hi," I said, struggling to breathe normally despite the bear hug she had me in. I was unsure of what to say to her. "You missed you. Or me." The cracks on the mask deepened and expanded, breaking the mask apart. The broken pieces crumbled to dust and disappeared into the air, revealing a grinning face that looked like mine, with the cute upturned nose and tiny bunny teeth. I'm praising my own looks, I know. The difference was her marble-like complexion, her white, almost transparent, wispy hair, and, of course, those demonic eyes. I missed you, I missed me, you, she said, still singing. Mayumayumiya. Am I dead? Nope, why would you think that? That's a weird thing to ask after just meeting again. I'm not the Grim Reaper. Just asking. Have you taken over my body? What are you talking about? She tilted her head and smiled innocently. I held her arms and tried to unwrap her around me, but she wouldn't budge. Was only wondering why I'm here. I thought you took over my body already. That's nonsense. We're one and the same. No one is taking over anyone. You do say that a lot. What should I ask her? I shouldn't risk antagonizing her or I might not get out of here. She did seem amiable to me. Where is this? Somewhere not your world. Does it really matter where this is? She said, repeating my earlier train of thought when I walked through the corridor. I shrugged to show I agreed with her. Is your next question why are you here? I nodded. Because I don't know the answer to that one. You're the one who came here. She nuzzled her cheeks against mine. She was surprisingly warm. I expected her to be dead cold because she looked like a vampire or some demon lord. Why don't we just bond? I'm not really a touchy-feely type, I said with no intention of finding out what she meant by that. If we're the same then you shouldn't be too. This doesn't count. This is just me loving myself. I do love myself so very much. Don't you? I do love myself very much too. Perhaps, I only love and can only love myself. Same Z's. We have so much in common. Miu. Oh, I do have a question I've been meaning to ask you, I said, interrupting her chanting. How do I turn into that monster? I pointed to the hulking mountain of fur covered in shadows. You let me borrow a face, and I really appreciated it. Super thanks. But I don't know how to use it. She let me go. I inhaled deeply. Grabbing my shoulders, she rotated me to face her. Seriously? You don't know how to use it? I don't. Sorry. Spooky Errand giggled with a thick air of condescension and patted my head like I was the biggest dumbass she had ever seen across whatever dimensions she'd been in. You're not a very good listener, aren't you? Didn't I say that face has to follow all your rules too when we last met and I gave you that face? I remember that. I've been thinking about how the rules affect me when I'm transformed. Ugh. That's not it. She placed her hands on the side of my head and pulled me closer until the tips of our noses bumped. Come on, you know this. Think. Her eyes burned like molten steel. I willed myself to look into them although I felt that I would probably lose myself in them. We stared at each other for several seconds. Shit, I get it now. Ding. Okay, I suck at making a light bulb noise. The face you gave me works based on the rules. But what rule is it? I tried to remember the times I had transformed. What do you think? She squealed in excitement. I cringed. I didn't think I have made such a reaction to anything ever. Exactly. I was scared there for a bit you might be an idiot. Because that would make me an idiot too. But I'm not. So good job. Do you have anything else to ask me? Nothing, for now. I paused then added, thanks for the help. Well then. Spooky Errand moved away and turned her back to me. Do visit sometimes. It's entertaining with you around. How do I come to visit you? Dunno. You just keep popping around here. Fierce sunlight pierced through my thin eyelids and poked me out of sleep. Was it for real this time? I purred in satisfaction as I stretched out my muscles charged with superhuman strength, then warily opened one eye to check if I was back in the real world. Dean's smiling face peered over mine. It's unlike you to wake up late. She checked the time on her phone. 7 a.m. It's not really late but late for your usual wake-up time. It always amazes me how you always get up at 5 sharp, even without an alarm. I'm just used to waking up at that time no matter what time I fell asleep. Even if I slept at 4 in the morning, I will still wake up at 5. I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes. There was something odd in my palm when I balled up my hand. With my thumb, I checked if the pimple patch I used to cover the crystalline growth was still there. Dean sat on the edge of my bed. You weren't outside stirring tea in your peculiar way, so I got worried you may be sick. I just woke up early then decided to go back to sleep. I opened my palm half an inch to take a peek, then quickly closed it. Shit. I clenched my jaws to stop myself cursing out loud. By the way, Dean said, Johan has hacked into the traffic camera feeds last night. Dario messaged me that they discovered a problem. You got that right that there's a problem. I nonchalantly hid my right hand under the covers. What's the problem? Every Saturday, between 8 p.m. to 12 midnight, the traffic cams monitoring the streets surrounding the club are turned off. They may be paying someone at Metro Traffic to do that. So, we don't know which truck to ambush. Yes, we need to do some brainstorming on our backup plan. Right now, they're viewing footage of neighboring streets trying to find a new lead. Myra will give me copies of some footage so we can help them out. Sure, I'll help with that, I said. I think we can talk about possible plans while we eat breakfast. I'll just fix myself up then follow you down. Dean hopped off my bed. Sure, we'll figure out something soon. I made avocado toast, by the way. I hope it turned out fine. Yum, I said with fake gusto. I opened my right hand when she left to examine the growth. It expanded. The crystal on the left portion of my palm branched out and gave birth to a second tiny crystal, connected with a hair's width vein of gold. Professor Bansa tapped on the microphone to check if it was on. Feedback echoed throughout the lecture hall, heralding the start of the agonizing and slow fight against sleepiness. Only a select few would win in the end. Crimlaw was in session. The professor cleared his throat and checked the screen of his laptop that was also projected behind him. We finished the basics of burden of proof, including the concept of proof beyond reasonable doubt, a term which we'll be hearing and reading plenty of times as we go along. As with other topics, we'll move on to discuss the adumbry aspect. Of course, suspected adumbry are not taken to court like alleged offenders for normal crimes, so the burden of proof works differently. The hurdle the state needs to overcome before a suspected adumbry is sentenced to execution is related to physical examination of the body of the subject, which you will learn more about in your future adumbry forensic courses at Melcher. Suffice to say that these tests are the counterpart of proof beyond reasonable doubt for criminal convictions. However, there are many exceptions to this, and he droned on and on. From my vantage point at the end of the sloped auditorium, I observed the class sink into a collective slump as they settled in for a couple of hours of stupor. Amazing how Professor Bansa could make an interesting and important subject sound so boring just by the way he spoke. While we didn't have a permanent sitting arrangement for this class, some professors did require it to have an easier time remembering a student if they sat at the same place every class. We all have settled into a sort of a sitting plan ourselves. My usual place for Professor Bansa's class was somewhere on the left side of the fourth row. However, I wasn't sitting there today because of two reasons. 1, Romello was back, sitting beside my usual spot and I didn't want to talk to him just yet, and 2, I had something more pressing to do than listen to the lecture. Romello was searching for me, craning his neck to scan the people in the class, and when he found me, he raised his brow and pointed to the empty seat beside him. I gave him an apologetic smile and nodded at my laptop. He gave me a thumbs up and mouthed, "Talk later," or something like that. I sucked at lip reading. He then faced forward to listen to Professor Bansa. In law school, the back rows of classes with lenient professors were usually reserved for people catching up for another class, be it studying, homework, or some project. Meryl and Alexis sitting right in front of me were, based on their laptop screens, studying for an elective course I didn't get, U.S. Bureau of Interdimensional Defense and the Panderton Act. Given my current predicament, maybe I should enroll in that course next semester. 5 seats to their right was Victor watching a movie. Okay, so the back seats could also be for people who wanted to waste time. Not like I could judge him. I wasn't exactly studying for my next class myself. I opened my palm to check the crystals growing on it. I now used 2 pimple patches, one for each of the tiny crystals. And for added measure, I applied a thick foundation to it. Unless someone really focused on my palm, and why would they, it didn't look weird at all. I pushed the pimple patches down to make sure they were sticking properly, then I reapplied makeup to blend the patches with my pale skin tone and to disguise the gold vein connecting them. This morning as we ate breakfast, I asked Dean what was the best sweat-proof makeup she could recommend and I immediately ordered it online. I wasn't a sweaty person, mind you. But I'd rather not risk it. Disguising it was the easy part. What was particularly difficult was controlling myself from absent-mindedly picking at it. When it was just that one teensy-weensy crystal, I could will myself to ignore it. I guess that showed I wasn't a princess compared to that mysterious woman in the children's story, the Princess and the Pea, who turned out to be royalty because she could feel a tiny pea through like 20 mattresses and 20 feather beds. Weird way to establish royalty, if you ask me. But now that there were 2 of them, the annoying feeling became so much more pronounced. They weren't so close as to grind against each other when I curved or closed my palm, but I could feel them there, like a tiny chunk of meat that got caught between my teeth that I simply couldn't ignore. I might be a princess just yet. Satisfied with my handiwork, I placed my makeup kit back into my bag. There were only a few instances someone could touch my palm. I wasn't into having my future predicted through palm reading, so that was -1 instance. Perhaps the most concerning case was shaking hands with someone. It was extremely rare in people's daily lives to shake somebody's hands unless it was job-related like a salesperson or something. But in law school, handshakes were pretty common. I practiced cupping my hand to avoid my palm touching another's in the event I was forced into a handshake by societal norms. It was awkward to practice shaking my left hand with my right. After a few tries, I gave up and moved on to the next order of business. Watching traffic cam footage. Before coming to Cresthorn, Dean and I passed by Melcher Hall to get a USB drive from Myra with copies of a few of the videos Johan took, or hacked, from Metro traffic. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop's port, opened the folder, and scanned the files. I randomly opened one. Streets, and people, and cars, and trucks, the occasional stray animal. Wow, this is boring. I sped up the video and blankly stared at it, my eyes probably glazing over. I didn't expect to find anything, but I found doing something mundane was conducive to thinking. They say that was why Einstein worked at a patent office. It was during this dull time of his life that he published numerous papers, including the one on the theory of relativity in his most famous work on the theory of tiered dimensionality, which eventually became the basis of Nazi experiments and, fast forward several decades, resulted in Spooky Errand slowly taking over my body. I did want Dario and the Super Friends to find the Red Island. I know, it was for the good of the world and all, blah, 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 whatever. But it was even more important now with the crystal on my palm slowly growing. Nothing happened for a couple of weeks after I met Spooky Errand, so I thought it was going to be slow, taking months to gradually change. Was it because I ate that guy with powers to kind of liquefy solid stuff? What was his name again? I think they said he was Rofirio. How long did nothing happen since I ate him? Nearly 2 weeks. This urge to consume, why? It worked, right? Right. In short, I was like a vampire needing a constant stream of food. I sighed. I needed to help the superhero wannabes find my food source. I need to consume. Dario and the others, including Dean, would be my last resort because eating them wouldn't last me a long time. I continued watching boring videos while Professor Bansa's lecture continued passing through one ear and out the other. He said, "We have discussed last week the ruling of the U.S. Supreme Court that the Due Process Clause in the Constitution includes protection from criminal conviction except upon proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This right, however, does not extend to adumbree, as enunciated in the landmark case of People v. Milford. I assume you already tackled this in your constitutional law class. The Bill of Rights does not extend to adumbree." I paused the video to listen to him. He went on, "The law does not distinguish between persons who have just been seated, who most likely retain their mental faculties and will continue to do so for some time, and adumbree who have already completely manifested into our side of the plane. They are all categorized as adumbree. In the field of science, yes, there are terms for different stages of adumbree seeding and mutation. Necessity dictates such. The eyes of the law, however, do not distinguish. This is very much deliberately implemented with the passing of the Panderton Act." He looked up from his screen. Yes, Mr. Harlan." We all looked in surprise at Jacob raising his hand. Even Professor Bansa was surprised someone cared enough to ask questions in his class. "Sir, isn't there a world of difference between someone recently seated and a fully realized monster?" Jacob Harlan asked. "The latter is dangerous, but the former is no danger to anyone yet. For an analogy, there is a difference between driving under the influence, which is just a misdemeanor and has a fine as a penalty, and vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated, which is a felony and is punishable by jail time. Shouldn't there be categorization? Any volunteers to answer?" I raised my hand, but Romello was quicker. "Mr. Staton, go ahead," Professor Bansa said. Romello looked back at me to wink before answering, "Not every drunk driver will result in manslaughter. But if many people are driving under the influence, it's only a matter of time before they get into an accident which may result in damage to person or property. The state is interested in penalizing driving under the influence to prevent something worse from happening. Vehicular manslaughter is that something worse happening, which warrants a higher penalty and is classified as a felony. Compared to adumbree, it's only a matter of time before a seated individual turns into a monster. We are absolutely sure that this specific drunk driver will damage persons and or property in the future, thus, there is no need to have different categorization." I nodded slowly as he spoke. He was right. There was no recorded case that someone seated was cured. There was no going back to being a normal human. And that included me. After answering, Romello once again turned to me and gave me a quick thumbs up. I rolled my eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Staton," Professor Bansa said. "Very well put. Although, it can be simplified. We have to understand what offense was committed in the first place. Letting oneself get seated, allowing an adumbree into our world, is a crime against humanity. From the point of seating, the crime has already been committed. From that point, such a traitor to humanity can, and should be, executed." The class went silent, not because they were bored, but because everyone was surprised that Professor Bansa, a gentle, soft-spoken, old man, could be that direct. Something was chilling with the way he said it. I sunk down my chair and sighed. Technically, I guess I no longer have any human rights. All the more reason I should strive to maintain my human appearance. No way anyone was going to execute me. After class, Romello waited for me by the door. My mind rushed about whether I should brush him off or talk to him. "Fine, I'll talk with him." "Hi, Romello," I said. "Are you fine now? I heard that you were attacked." "I guess so. I did get banged up pretty badly." He shook his body. "All fine now. How should I go about this?" I wasn't sure what he remembered. "Did they catch the people who did this to you?" I said, pointing at the bandage around his head. "No, the police don't have much to go on. I'm not even sure what happened before I woke up at the hospital." "Really? What do you recall?" "I was with you." We rode the train and I was supposed to accompany you home, right? I paused, considering what I should say next. There should be cameras at the train station. Easy there, big guy. I playfully poked his chest. You wanted to accompany me home, but I said no. We did walk for some time together, but I didn't allow you anywhere near my apartment. He held up his hands. Relax, I'm not a stalker. Although I couldn't remember what happened back then, I'm sure I had only good intentions. I'm a beacon of morality, I swear. I put on a concerned face. Seriously though. What was the last thing you could remember? I remember getting off the train with you. And I think I noticed people following us. I suppose I got attacked after we parted ways. I gasped. I'm lucky I already left. Then I forced myself to stutter. I didn't mean it that way. It's bad what happened to you, I was saying. Romello laughed. I understand. I'm also glad you weren't there when I got attacked. Do the police have any leads? You said you have an uncle who's a detective or something. Lieutenant Hall. Yes, he's a detective. We're not actually blood related, but I do consider him my uncle. He inserted his hands in his pockets and leaned against the wall. Still no leads, or at least that's what Uncle told me. I asked other cops I know about it and they said that it's probably some mobster who got beef with my uncle. He's clean, never accepts any bribe, and has a personal vendetta against organized crime and corruption. They probably attacked me as a warning to him. I'm relieved they didn't do anything to you. Oh, wow. I don't know what to say. That's such a difficult situation. This meant he didn't remember I told him at the train station that I suspected the people following us were after me. I'm just going to tell you that it's probably for the best we don't get too close to each other. I'm going to try to help my uncle with this. This doesn't sit right with me that I'm being used to threaten him. Feels like I'm a burden. I don't get it. What are you going to do? What can you even do? That I don't know. But I'm sure I'll figure something out. I'm not going to just sit here and do nothing. He saw my skeptical face. Yeah, okay, I'm not like a secret assassin or whatever with some hidden fighting skills. But I'm pretty resourceful, and I know the streets. This seems to be way over your head. Can't you tell your uncle to stop whatever he's doing? I can't. I mean, you're up against scary people. Are you familiar with the story of the two wolves? Romello said. They say it's a Native American legend. I'm not sure of which tribe. Cherokee, I think. No, I haven't heard of that one. There are two wolves inside of us. What they represent differ in various versions of the story. There is light and darkness, hope and despair, love and hate, righteousness and sin, good and evil. In this case, the two wolves can represent bravery and fear, or doing what is wrong and doing nothing. These two wolves fight continuously. Fight inside of us. Which one do you think wins? I don't know. Romello, with a resolute face, said, the one you feed. I stared with a brow raised, and then snorted, trying to hold down a laugh. He scratched his head. I know, all right. It sounds cheesy. But it sounded awesome in my head, like I was in a movie. My point still stands. There's something wrong here and I'll set it right. I'm not going to let fear get the better of me. I'm sorry, but I'll have to keep my distance from you. He walked out the door, which admittedly looked cool even though what he said didn't make sense to me. Why was everyone so eager to be a hero? There was no point. My understanding of how people should behave was being challenged. Maybe I was the normal one. There was one thing I agreed with Romello. I should feed the wolf inside me. It just felt right. And it couldn't wait until we find the Red Island. I had to get into the Eve Club and find something inside to eat. Lieutenant Jeremiah Hall of the La Esperanza City Police Department scratched his graying stubble while his commanding officer, Captain Hayward, hollered at him over the phone. He said, "Yes, sir," a few times and added in a couple of grunts and other noises of agreement to appease the irate captain without particularly listening to what the latter was saying as he kept his eyes peeled for anything out of place in his surroundings. Mother Core Disciples Charities, it stated in bold letters above the wide, speckless, glass doors that led into the soup kitchen that was Hall's destination for the day. Every time someone entered or exited the building, sumptuous smells wafted towards the parking area at the front where he leaned on the hood of his unmarked cruiser. From what he had heard, the McHunter family donated this 3-story building to the MCDC years ago, a PR tactic to influence the public opinion in their favor, which they sorely needed after the head of their family, the big man himself, Raphael McHunter, was executed for being in a Dunbury. Hall didn't follow the news after that. Last he heard, the family members and employees sitting in jail for aiding and abetting in a Dunbury were still appealing their convicted asses all the way up to the Supreme Court. They were lucky they didn't get the death sentence, but that was the extent they could twist the law with money. No amount of wealth could save Raphael McHunter, a confirmed a Dunbury, from execution. Sadly, instead of rebuilding their business empire, the remaining McHunters who weren't in jail fought amongst themselves for a cut in the tasty pie that was the estate of their grandfather. "Hall. Are you still there?" Hayward barked. "Are you listening to what I said? Here. Let's see. A gold eye from Uspid is coming. No going to 15th area. Focus on the Martinez case for this week because the mayor wants something good to announce to the press. That stupid seminar next Wednesday. Have I already said not to go to the 15th? You did, Hayward said. He continued in a softer tone. What happened to Romello was awful, and we will catch the people who did that to him. But there's nothing to show that it's connected to the explosion at the docks, all right? Pure coincidence, both incidents happened on the same day. I don't want to hear any more complaints from Captain Diaz that you were in their area doing your own investigation. Copy, sir. Both of them knew he wasn't going to stop his jaunts to the docks. This wasn't a film or criminal thriller, but even outside of movies, Hall knew there were times he had to trust his guts even when the facts said otherwise. This was such a time. I know you have a lot on your plate right now. Rest during your free time. You know we have a policy against handling personal cases. Yes, sir. I understand, Hall said, wondering how many more iterations of those words he could string together. And keep the gold eye out of my hair until he's finished with his business and out of this city. I'll send you his contact details. He wants to meet with you as soon as possible. I'll get on that. After the call, Hall checked the phone number Hayward sent him. Then he looked up from his phone to the person approaching him. Is he inside there, Castan? He said while messaging the gold eye. The freshly minted detective who recently became his partner in his personal investigations shook his head. He didn't come here all day, LT. But the soup kitchen director pointed me to some people who know him. They were still lining up, so I asked the director if we could borrow a table to talk with them while they eat. Set aside a place for us. He said that guy usually shows up around this time, but it's probably good news if he no longer needed to come to this place. Let's hope that's the case. What did Cap say, LT? The usual. Something you might find interesting though, there's a gold eye from the bureau who's going to meet us. Meet me. But he's coming here right now, so you'll meet him too. Always in a rush, those guys. A gold eye from the bureau? The bid? What's a gold eye? I meant the Augs of the bureau. There was a time their eyes used to be mandated colored gold. They can change it when they're undercover, but on official business it's gold. That was around the time of the McHunter scandal. They were swarming the city, getting up in everyone's business. Our nickname for them back then was Gold Eyes, so you'll often hear old-timers like me refer to them as such. Been a while since there was a high-profile investigation from the bureau in this city. Hall walked to the soup kitchen and gestured for Castan to follow him in. I haven't met a bid August yet. Why does he want to talk with you? Unless that's top secret. Nah, it's about some case I had several years ago. Nothing so sensational. The soup kitchen was fairly large. It could sit 100, possibly 120 or so people, one of the larger soup kitchens in the city. Even though the building was donated to them more than a decade ago, the interior appeared brand new. Fairly fresh coat of white and pale green paint mirroring the facade of the building, and sparkling clean tiles with no hint of any crack. A catchy tune played over the speakers. Hall recognized it as a worship song of religious believers of the Mother Corps. Every day, on his way to the precinct, he saw people asking for donations for the MCDC, and they always played those worship songs. Hall didn't find it surprising there was a small shrine with a depiction of the Mother Corps to the left of the door so that everyone leaving the building could see it. Some of the customers chose to bow to the shrine, touch it, or make some sign before they exited. Various religious sects worshipping either the Mother Corps, the Corbrings, or both, have their own interpretation of the Mother Corps, but, of course, no one except the Corbrings knew its actual appearance. The place was about 90% full. An average person who knew nothing about soup kitchens or food banks might have a mental image of something akin to a refugee camp, filled with people who looked like they hadn't taken a bath or shaved in days, wearing dirty, grubby clothes, the only piece of clothing they owned. It wasn't anything like that. Everyone here was dressed normally. No one could have guessed each one of these people had financial problems based on their appearance. There were also a few men wearing ties and jackets over their dress shirts. Just goes to show you can't tell what a person is going through with appearance alone, Hall said in a voice low enough only Castan could hear. Are those your wise words for the day, LT? To which Hall replied with only an amused grunt. Castan pointed to a frail old man leaning on a four-pronged walking cane. There's the director. His name's Noel. Good morning, sir, Hall said, stooping to accept the hand offered to him. I'm Lieutenant Hall, LEPD. Very nice place you have here. The people of La Esperanza appreciate this social service extended by the MCDC. We share our blessings. Every act of kindness may prevent someone from falling into the clutches of the Adumbri, he answered with a soft voice. Very true, Castan said, nodding eagerly. Barty's friends are over there. At the end of the hall. But before going there, would you like something to eat? Castan opened his mouth, but Hall quickly spoke before he could say anything. We appreciate the offer, but we've already eaten. Castan's face dropped and he shrugged in resignation. If you could show us the way, Hall firmly said. Please. The three men sat across the table from Hall. Right in front of these three men were plates piled high with beef macaroni and thick pieces of buttered toast on the side. Larson sitting on the left side refused to make eye contact with Hall. Strands of different kinds of fur clung to his yellow sweater, which was starting to fade. Working at a pet grooming perhaps? Or dog sitting for someone who had many dogs? Hall doubted if Larson himself owned multiple dogs, he wouldn't be able to afford taking care of them. The person at the right introduced himself simply as Spuds. He was jittery and didn't want to say anything about himself except that he had a bright future that was robbed of him, and now he didn't want his friends to see that he goes here. Hall didn't find anything suspicious about him. Spud was keeping secrets, but it didn't feel like he would be interested in them. After they all introduced themselves, Bolivar leaned forward as if they were in a secret meeting. Did something happen to Barty? What's all this about? If it's something illegal, we don't know nothing about that. Yeah, he's right, Spud said in between bites of his toast. We just know each other here. Watch the TV over there and comment on current events. Anything about our lives, we keep mum about those. That's each of our own personal business. We talk about the news, which is everyone's business. Hall placed his hands on the table, palms facing up, to show openness. We're investigating a missing persons case. Multiple persons perhaps, or one, or maybe none. Bolivar's brows furrowed. It seemed he was the only one intently listening. Hall continued, suffice to say we have a tip from a credible source that someone, or an organization, is kidnapping homeless people. He nodded at Bolivar. You understand how hard it is to verify, right? We don't even know who the missing persons are. Excited he was personally referred to, Bolivar said, you got that right. Barty was living in his car for a couple of months already. Dunno where he parks at night to sleep. But it's all over the city. Wouldn't really know if he's missing. And before you get any ideas, Spud said, we don't have no idea where Barty is right now, or yesterday, or a week ago. Bolivar agreed with this. Hall stared at Larson for a couple of seconds to see if he could get him to say something, but the latter stayed silent. What do you know about Barty then? I know you don't talk about personal stuff, like Spud here said, but nothing at all. I'm sure he would have mentioned something. Again, Hall stared directly into the eyes of Bolivar, subtly pressuring him to give any information at all since Larson was of no help and Spud was just spinning them around. I think he worked at a chop shop, Bolivar said after some moments of thinking. Hey, nothing illegal. We know nothing about nothing, Spud reminded him. Only watching the news and talking about it. No idea if it's true, just that Barty mentioned it a couple of times. Was some time ago. When he left that place, that's when he started living in his car. Hall continued pressing them for information. He only found bits and pieces of a puzzle, or maybe different puzzles. There were too many questions in this trail and Barty was his best bet for the next lead. And now, Barty seemed to be missing. Perhaps the first missing person that he could identify. How about when you're watching the TV? Castan said. What about it? Spud said. Anything weird about his comments on the news? Or if not on the news, the ads, anything on TV? Spuds and Bolivar looked at each other and shrugged. To Hall's surprise, Larson, who had been quiet this entire time, spoke. If it's ads, there was an ad for clinical trials for a stress pill. Like those that say they lessen the chance of collapsing our Lois field. Some science mumbo-jumbo shit like that, Bolivar said. But I don't remember an ad for a clinical trial. I recall Barty saying he was going to try to apply. It was only one time that ad showed. And Barty never mentioned it again. But I distinctly remember that time because we were talking about clinical testing makeup on animals and how inhumane it is. And I have a comment on that, Spuds jumped in. The conversation meandered to various topics. Hall couldn't get any more from them. That clinical trial was the key. He heard something like it before. An acquaintance of one of the supposedly missing persons also mentioned going to testing of some kind. It wasn't for a stress pill, but a psychological study on indigent individuals. Hall clenched his jaws and slowly exhaled. The puzzle was getting larger, yet he couldn't catch up in finding the pieces. Someone tapped on his shoulder. Excuse me, detectives, Noel, the director of the soup kitchen said. A man is looking for you. Hall turned to see Noel and the hulk of a man behind him. From the bureau, I presume. The man nodded and flashed his identification. He appeared to be half Hall's age, but if he was an August, what was to prevent him from replacing his face? His skin did have a strangely reflective sheen. The gold eye arrived quickly and even entered the soup kitchen to find him. He stood up and extended his hand, his 6.5 feet was still a head shorter than the gold eye. Good afternoon, Lieutenant Hall. The man returned the handshake. You can call me Matt. Let's go with Matt. Hall grasped the hand firmly and tested the strength of the grip. Though the skin on the palm had the texture of skin, beneath it wasn't human flesh at all, more like the feel of a Kevlar vest. The hand had an unnatural weight to it as well. How may I help you? I hope I'm not interrupting you, said Matt, clearly aware he was interrupting. If you're done, can we go outside? We have things to discuss. Yes, we're done here, Hall said. Let's go, Castan. No need to waste this man's time. Every movement of his is powered by enough energy to supply this place's electricity for a month. Matt laughed. My energy system is not nearly as inefficient as that, mind you. Hall thanked Barty's friends and Noel, and made his way back to the parking area. Are we going to talk here or? Do you know of a good restaurant where we can have some privacy? Sure, I know of a place. Hall threw the keys to Castan. Danny's should be empty this time. He was usually the one who drove, but he wanted to spend the time thinking and consolidating what he had so far on the case so he wouldn't forget any of it. And perhaps, because it was fresh information, he could find a link. Castan jogged to the driver's side of the car while the Goldeye walked to a black SUV nearby. Hall was about to open the car door. Bang! Bang! Hall instinctively dropped down and drew his gun. Crouching behind the cover of his car, he looked for the threat. As he turned around, he noticed Matt was behind him, arm outstretched, palm open somewhere behind where his head was a second ago. A tiny piece of metal dropped to the concrete ground. The bullet. What was that? Castan said. Where is he? The guy who presumably shot at them was right outside of the soup kitchen, lying on a pool of his blood. From the screams of the people in the soup kitchen, he most likely came from inside and followed them. Hall noticed Matt had formed a finger gun with his other hand and it was pointed in the direction of the perp. Fastest draw in the West. Matt held up his hand and blew on his smoking index finger. Can you check him? He asked Castan, who obliged and ran to the dead body while still on the lookout for other possible attackers. Didn't know it was this exciting here. Thanks for saving me. I owe you one. All in a day's work, you don't owe me for that. You do owe me something else. What is it? You owe me an explanation. Someone anonymously sent a video to us. Perhaps you're familiar with it. Giant furry creature ripping apart storage containers while being shot at. Interesting video. Very interesting. What does it have to do with me? Matt looked him in the eye. Hall was certain he was being scanned. Isn't it interesting that a certain Lieutenant Jeremiah Hall would send an anonymous tip to us of such magnitude instead of going through official channels? If that's true, then it does sound interesting.